Good afternoon. I'm Marianne Gomez Horta, President and CEO of the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. Welcome to the 2020 CHLI Future Leaders Conference, The Journey to the Job, Exploring Different Directions. The Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute is the premier organization founded by members of Congress to advance the Hispanic community's economic progress with a focus on social responsibility and global competitiveness. Our vision is advancing the Hispanic community's diversity of thought. Thank you for joining us to learn and share about today's entrepreneurial and technological skills necessary to succeed in your careers. Engage with us via Twitter utilizing the hashtag CHLI FLC is for the Future Leaders Conference, of course. And special thank you to our sponsor, the Ford Fund, for their support of this conference and for supporting our Global Leaders Internship and Fellowship Program. The Ford Motor Company has been supporting high school and college students with scholarships for many, many years. We're so happy that they're engaged with CHLI. And now I am happy to introduce one of our board members, Joe Avila from the Ford Fund. Joe, it's up to you.
Thank you, Marianne. Hello, everyone. Hello, fellow leaders and all the CHLI family. To me, it's an honor to be here representing the Ford Motor Company Fund today. I'm glad that we were able to gather and get together here virtually. The Ford Fund, for those of you that might not know, is the philanthropic arm of Ford Motor Company. We were founded many years ago, and since then, we have been instrumental in supporting the corporate social responsibility investment to strengthen our communities for the business. Over 40 years, the Ford Fund has been investing specifically in the Hispanic community. We have invested in programs that drive socioeconomic mobility in Hispanic communities across the U.S. and Latin America. One of our prime and signature programs is the Ford Driving Dreams program, which empowers youth to pursue their dreams of higher education. Today, the initiative has impacted over 200,000 students and has delivered more than $10 million in educational resources. But we couldn't do this alone. We need a strong partnership so we can continue helping to drive a brighter future to the next generation of Latinos by providing unique and innovative opportunities. And one of our key partners is actually the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, CHLI. I want to say thank you to the chair, Lincoln Diaz-Balart, President and CEO Marianne Gomez Horta, and all my fellow board members and all the CHLI family, but also especially all the interns that I've met through the years, that we have supported through the years, all the students that are participating today, and the alumni class of CHLI Alumni Network. Ford is a corporate founder of CHLI, and we hope to continue this partnership for many, many more years. For me, it's very exciting. Every year, every time I get to meet a new class of interns or a new class of CHLI Future Leaders. I know that today we're doing this differently. It's a virtual program, and I think it's an opportunity for us not only to continue getting connected, continue our network and building our network. Feel free to use the chat to send questions. If you want to get in touch with me, CHLI and the team members, Diego and Nicolas, they can help you to connect with me. I know that there is a strong series of panelists that you're going to go through. I know one of the topics is the entrepreneurial mindset. I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. That's something that as you build and you think about your career, entrepreneurial mindset is something that not only every employer is looking for, but I don't want you to get concerned as a student or get scared about that term. Oh, I need to be an entrepreneur to have that mindset. I think we all, especially with Latino family, with Hispanic family background, we all have that in our genes. We're very good about starting small businesses. We're very good about, connecting families and helping families when it comes to a new idea or something when it comes to a family business. So entrepreneurial mindset is nothing more than, being proactive, than being perseverant. but being persistent, right, with perseverance, but also having passion about what you're trying to accomplish. I'm gonna let the experts to lead that, but I wanted to say hello to all of you. Thank you, Chile and the Chile family and Marianne for the opportunity during this pandemic to support this. Ford Motor Company, as many other companies, have been hit hard, but we want to continue supporting our partners, our communities during this time. So with that, please stay healthy and safe. Take care, and thank you for the opportunity. I enjoy the program.
All right. Thanks again, Joe, and thank you to everyone at Ford Motor Company as well. As Joe mentioned, not only has he helped with different interns throughout the years, but he still helps out as a mentor as well with many of the interns who have gone through the programs. And so, as he mentioned, if you want to connect with him, feel free to jot a little question or anything else in the Q&A, and we will be happy to connect with you. You can also find Joe. Here I'm giving out all your secrets, Joe. You can also find Joe on Facebook and LinkedIn as well, so make sure that you connect with him in any other way that you can. Now we're going to switch a little bit and want to share with you, we have some remarks by two of Chile's congressional board members. So for those of you who may not be familiar, we do have 10 members of Congress from both sides of the aisle who serve on our board. So next up is remarks by Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart from Florida, who also is one of our vice chairmen, and Congressman William Hurd from Texas. Okay, I think we have the next video coming up here. Sorry, we've got a little buffering here going on. The wonders of the virtual conferences here. Okay, I think this keeps freezing up a little bit, so why don't we check in here? Let me see here what else we have to see if the next video is up. So I know that probably some of you are thinking that it's your computer, but I think it's a combination. We have some of the buffering going on as well. So let's give this another another minute here and see if we can get that other video up. Hold on a second. Why don't we go ahead and queue up the videos and we can show them up in a little bit later. If we can go ahead and move on with the first panel. With our first panel, and hopefully we've got everybody ready in their section here to kind of get going with the first one again. Let's see here, we've got Nina Roque, who's going to be our moderator. Just a reminder for the questions, there's two areas on your WebEx. One's a Q&A and the other one is the chat. Make sure to use the Q&A to enter the questions for the panelists and for Nina, and not the chat. So I would like to introduce our moderator. As I mentioned, Nina Roque serves as the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council. She was a Chile intern in 2008 in the Ford Leadership Program, where she interned for former Congressman and Chile founder, the Honorable Lincoln Díaz-Solar. She is also a former Chile Pacific Program and External Affairs. During her time with Chile, she was instrumental in developing the Chile Alumni Association. Nina went on to serve as a special assistant to the U.S. Secretary of Labor. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science and Criminology from Florida State University, and has a Juris Doctor from Hofstra University School of Law. Welcome, Nina, and your panel. Passing it on to you, dear.
Hi, can you all hear and see me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you, dear.
Okay, well, it looks like my camera's on, so hopefully it'll turn on in a few and you all will be able to see me. I did my hair for you.
All right, I love it.
So thank you so much for the introduction, Marianne. I am grateful for the opportunity to participate on today's panel. Very grateful to the entire Chile team, board, and staff. As Marianne mentioned, my name is Nina Roque, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council. We are an independent, nonpartisan federal advisory committee established in 1988 to provide advice and policy recommendations to the President, Congress, and the Small Business Administration. I'm also a very proud Chile alumni. I participated in the Future Leaders Conference back in 2008. This is my second year now moderating, so great to be back for sure. I am really excited to be joined on the panel today by Anna Madon, the owner and operator of McDonald's Corporation, Mark Williams, principal at Ferox Strategies, Therese Mears, counsel for ranking member at the Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Subcommittee, and Stephen Dunbar III, Executive Vice President at Equitable Advisors in Georgia. Welcome to you all. On today's panel, we will be discussing how to unleash your entrepreneurial mindset, especially in the lead up to a post-COVID world. So what are the opportunities for all of you budding entrepreneurs to bring your innovative ideas to life? This panel will run for about 45 minutes. I have prepared some questions along with the Chile team. If anyone here has any other questions, make sure to enter them in the chat so that I can also be monitoring that and ask those questions throughout. So let's get started. COVID-19 has unfortunately abruptly and drastically changed the economic landscape in which we are operating and has disrupted local ecosystems. The unemployment rate is currently at a little over 11%, and we have over 17 million Americans out of work. So now more than ever, we really need to ensure that entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, really have the tools and resources necessary to be able to turn their creativity and innovative ideas into action. Turning innovation and creativity into action is a very essential, especially in times of crisis. So going down the line, Anna, we could start with you. Can each of you briefly, just 1 or 2 minutes, introduce yourselves and share a little bit about what you think are the #1 skill sets and capabilities that young entrepreneurs should be working on developing right now, present day and in a post-COVID world? So Anna, can you start us off?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm getting a reverb, but as long as you can hear me. So good afternoon, and thank you so much for allowing me to join you this afternoon. My name is Anna Madden, and I am not the owner-operator of McDonald's Corporation, so I just want to clarify that. I am the owner-operator of McDonald's franchises and under McDonald's Corporation, but no, I'm not the owner of the whole big nut. So I do own and operate 8 McDonald's franchises in central and northern New Jersey. I am a second generation. My dad started the business about 35 years ago, and I have a daughter 3 generations in the business today. And then I hold a leadership position within the corporation. I chair the Association for McDonald's Hispanic Owner-Operators.
Great.
And so your question, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead with the introduction.
No, if you would like to go into the question, that would be great. So a little bit about the skill set that entrepreneurs should start developing now.
So interestingly enough, in a business like mine, which although is one of the top 5 brands in the world, I am a small business owner, and I do not have a degree in business. So along the way, it's been a bit of the school of hard knocks. So I think a business foundation is very, very important, but not essential, because I've also been able to be very successful learning along the way. But people skills are paramount in business, because really no matter what product you're serving, people are going to be the most important piece. So your people skills, team building, leadership skills will all be very important in your future growth.
Great. Stephen, you want to go next? Thank you, Anna.
Sure, Nina. Thank you. First of all, thank you to hosting me and having me be a part of this discussion. I very much appreciate the opportunity. Introduction you already did, so I'll focus on the question. In terms of the skill set, I would say 2 things. Number 1, it is important to be anchored in what motivates us. In other words, I think Simon Sinek says it really well, start with why. In other words, what's my purpose or my cause that intrinsically motivates me, so that when I have the difficult times, and on some level when the good times come, I can make my way through them. And going through COVID right now is really testing, I see it all the time, testing people in their resolve. And if their resolve is not anchored in something meaningful, they fold like a tent. So I would really anchor ourselves in that. What are you motivated by? What is the thing that gets you up in the morning? What's your why? And Simon Sinek, again, does a great job of articulating that. The second thing I would say is what Anna said, I'll add to that people skills, what I call being a peacemaker. Here's what I mean by that, particularly in the corporate context, knowing how to take divergent and sometimes conflicting views and be the voice that brings them to a consensus around profitability. That's a skill that is really important right now. And I think particularly so in light of the D&I that is really in focus right now, we have an opportunity as people of color to get in the front of conversations we may not have had access to previously. So having that peacemaking skill is really important right now. Back to you, Nina.
Awesome. Thank you. Therese? I see you, I think, Therese. Therese and I work very closely together, so great to see you on the panel.
Hi, Nina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, everybody, and good afternoon. Very excited to be here today to share some experience and knowledge, not only in my current role as counsel to Ranking Member Ben Cardin of Maryland on the Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee. We are certainly in the middle of legislation, drafting, negotiating a fourth package of COVID relief. And I've had the amazing opportunity to work on CARES itself. We actually were Title I of the biggest piece of legislation ever to pass in our history of the country. And this is quite a historical moment as well for the Small Business Committee with the amount of work and responsibility we have in working for the 30 million small business owners around this country. Not only have I had the opportunity to work on the committee, I've also been a small business owner myself. My husband and I launched and sold yogurt, high protein, low sugar yogurt. We did grocery, we did corporate cafeterias, university cafeterias, and e-commerce. So I have a manufacturing background, which I also bring to my work, and a small business background. Before that, I also had the opportunity to teach law students and work at my law school, building businesses in the community through legal clinical education. And so we were working during the economic downturn in 2009, 2010, 2011 to bring small businesses up and going. So I also have and bring that skill set too. For those of you who have ties to Miami, I'm from Miami, born and raised there. My mother is from Cuba originally, and I went to high school in Miami, Carrollton School, if any of you are familiar with South Florida, and talking about the skill sets in today's world. Pre-COVID and post-COVID, I kind of see it all the same, right? Whether we have economic disruption, whether we have a pandemic, or whether we're in good times, these are really traditional core skills that as students, as graduates, as young working professionals, you really need to focus on and work on because they will just serve you. And I've actually now, through my career and the different things I've done, have actually and truly work on them and do believe that they help you. They really do. They help you get further along. The first I would say is develop your network. This takes a long time, right? It should be always ongoing. You need to understand who in whatever particular industry you want to focus on, you need to get to know. And that network essentially leverages you up, right? It leverages up your knowledge, it leverages up your experience, it leverages up your contacts to be able to navigate if you're selling goods, if you're selling services, or if you choose a more traditional path and go into the workforce. Just those people who've walked ahead of you, have 20 years ahead of you, they can really share that knowledge and help you carve out your path. Another skill set, this is obvious, but sales, sales, and sales. You need to be able to sell. You need to be able to sell your good. You need to be able to sell your product, your services. In the entrepreneurial world, if you can't sell, you can't make money. And in a traditional working world, career-wise, you need to be able to sell your skill set and your accomplishments because that gets you the title you want and the salary you want. So regardless of what you're doing, you have to be able to sell. This is obvious too, but I just want to say you need to be loyal, you need to be committed, you need to show up on time, and you need to have passion for what you do. You need to be genuinely excited about what you're doing, what you're making, and what you're focusing on day to day. Otherwise, people will not support you, people will not back you. If you don't have passion for your own abilities, your own product, your own path in life, how are you going to move forward if you don't see the vision or if you don't have the passion? And then the last thing, this was very hard, something that I've had to go through, but you also as an entrepreneur need to know your stopping point. So for example, you need to know what is that point where
If you can't get the business up and going, if you can't hit your sales targets, if you can't hit and turn a profit, you need to know when it is okay to walk away. And in making that decision, you also have to realize that post-entrepreneurship, there is a fantastic world, right? You'll have along the way developed an incredible set of skill sets from resiliency and outreach and developing that network, maturity that comes along with building a company that will serve you well throughout your life.
Awesome. Thanks, Grace. I love it. Mark, what about you? And when you were to answer the question, could you maybe give a little bit of advice about how we can develop these skill sets and capabilities while we're in this COVID world where a lot of us are quarantined or, restricted from our usual networking activities, for example?
Yeah, no, it's one, thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, Nina, for being the moderator here. Just a little bit of background on myself really quickly. I'm the principal at Fair Ox Strategies. I've been here a year. Prior to that, I wrapped up a 15-year career on the Hill where I was the chief of staff for a committee chairman. So, Teresa, I understand kind of what you're working with and what you're going through right now, and I'm not envious of how much you guys are dealing with. So, thanks for everything that you do. Everyone's kind of touched on it to this point. Kind of all the buzzwords that we use for entrepreneurialism, right? I think the biggest thing that everyone's touched on is having a passion for what you do. Right? The reason why you wake up in the morning, it'll lead to everything else that you'll need to do. You need to be hardworking. You're not going to be hardworking if you're not motivated about what you're doing, right? You're not going to really work at expanding your network if you're not motivated to kind of what that end leads to. So understanding kind of what your motivation is and what your passion is leads you on to, kind of greater things down the road. I think another thing to be cognizant of is complacency and being comfortable. And it's something that I've always told people to fight against. Once you find yourself in a position where you think you've mastered a skill set or you feel really comfortable in a position that it's time for you to move on. You need to be constantly growing and pushing the limits of what you're capable of. Now, all that has kind of changed in this COVID landscape, the way we go about, what we do. I've found it, in the lobbying world, one of the things that we really lean on is our network, right? And so the ability to still connect with that network has changed because you're not doing it in person, right? You're doing everything virtually like this. And so you need to take every opportunity that you possibly can to continue to expand your network, right? And that's got to happen, on your social networks. That's got to happen in your email. It's got to happen via LinkedIn. You've got to be really vigilant about staying on people's radars and at front of mind. Because at the end of the day, when you go in to talk to people about, whether you're selling something or whether you're selling yourself, if you're at the front of mind, then you've got that much more likelihood of being successful.
Awesome. That actually pivots into my next question perfectly. So at the National Women's Business Council, we talk to small business owners across the country every single day. And we are hearing, of course, that business owners are having to pivot their business, having to completely rethink the model of their business, find alternative forms of capital to maintain their business or grow their business during these times. So can you all provide us some specific examples how COVID has impacted your business and specifically how you have had to pivot and reimagine how you conduct your business? Mark, actually, do you want to just go ahead?
Sure. The government relations has always been more of a face-to-face business, right? It's been a relationship face-to-face business. And it's been really interesting, and Therese can probably speak to this, our interactions with the Hill and how that's changed. You're no longer doing the face-to-face interactions, and so all of it takes place virtually. And so you've got to be very vigilant in how you're managing those interactions, how you're managing those relationships. And we've all changed. But I will say one of the cooler things about doing all this virtually is that it kind of makes more sense time management wise. So you're able to do a lot more of these things that you want, right? But you can, and I've seen it with members of Congress being able to stack up, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. They can do it from their house. They can do it from wherever. So I've always said that I could probably do 99% of my job from my bed. Now that I've proven that, I don't want to do it. That's how I've seen it change over this 4 months. Is that we've all kind of had to bend and understand the virtual environment that we're all working in now.
Awesome. Stephen, you look like you're ready to jump in.
Yes, thank you. I would say two things. Number one, let me give you an example. This is a friend of the organization who's a CEO of a Fortune 100 company. Here was his meeting rhythm pre-COVID. He did 21 meetings a year that were designed around touching his constituents, board of directors, top employees, so forth. Through this point this year, he's done 85 of them. So 21 over last year, 85 through June of this year. Comment, communication has had to increase dramatically because of the lack of physical and in-person touch. Next, access is better than it's ever been, because speaking now from that leadership seat, we are looking for ideas and feedback from wherever we can get it, because we all know that the best ideas may come from unconventional places. So speaking to the young people on the call, I would say, because people in leadership have had to increase their frequency of communication and they're looking for good ideas and feedback from wherever they can get it, that access to the young people on this call is the best it's ever been. So take advantage of it. How do you do that? Going back to your first question, Nina, in this context, we have access to books to be our mentors and to online tools to improve our skill sets. So here are two books I would recommend. Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud speaks to when is enough and I need to move on. And the other book I would recommend is Story Selling, The Art of Story Selling by Nate Sachs. For the young people on the call, when you take advantage of that access, please don't do it with facts and figures and resumes. Use story selling to grab the attention of people, because they will remember how you made them feel, which will lead you to better access opportunities after that.
Awesome. Anna, how about you?
Yeah, so that was great, Stephen. So I'll answer it in two ways. And the first will be obviously my business, so McDonald's, and how we, number one, were declared essential during COVID, and then how we served the public and the healthcare workers and all of the first responders changed dramatically, right? Because our business went directly to delivery, drive-through, and digital. So a very big change for us, and most important in that change, the safety of our people as we continue to serve the public. So huge changes, PPE, very important, the safety of, and then depending on where you are in the country, how it has affected your folks, because through family and through the workers, there have been impacts. And so it has been a challenge to, in some parts, keep the restaurants open and staffed. As Hispanics, you know, we tend to be more familiar in terms of our business. So I have families that have worked in my organization for over 3 generations. And so you take a very personal interest in keeping them safe as we serve the public. And then I'll go over to the corporate side, because obviously I've been a victim of all those 85 Zoom meetings in a week. And for me, I'm not a corporate person, so I need to run my business. So this has been a juggling act for me, as McDonald's needs to continue to plan for the future, and as the country is evolving in different stages, and I have national responsibilities there. But what I will say is that COVID, as well as the political and social climate of our country today, has opened the eyes of, I'll say, McDonald's Corporation, but I think corporations in general in the country, to realize that diversity is not just a set of words, and it's time to forget about the words and make our actions determine our words. So for the audience today, there are huge opportunities. There are opportunities for you to be young entrepreneurs in McDonald's. We are looking for Hispanics and diversity across the board. There are huge opportunities within the corporation. Your skill set, your journey brings you from a different place. So I think it is most important to value what you bring to the table. The Spanish language is more important than ever, as $2.3 trillion of buying power in this country comes from the Hispanic consumer. So I think that we bring a lot of value, and I can speak for in McDonald's Corporation, the Hispanic owner-operators lead the system in sales and transactions. But also just as important as the value that we bring, we need to value ourselves. Because I think that sometimes we tend to think that if we do a great job, we'll be recognized. We don't sell ourselves as well as others. And it's time to sell ourselves and to take advantage of the opportunity and know that whatever discipline you are in, a diverse thought process is a much richer end product. So
Awesome.
I think there are opportunities as well as, obviously the challenges that COVID has brought.
Thank you. I actually have a specific question that I'll ask you. Therese, if I can ask you a very specific question, not to put you on the spot, but in terms of businesses that maybe on your work on the Small Business Committee, you've come across maybe some businesses who have been able to get some of that PPP funding and have been able to pivot their business model. I don't know if you have some examples that you could share with us.
Well, one of our, I would say, accomplishments with the CARES Act was being able to get technical assistance dollars to flow to what we call the SBA resource partners. Those are a network of partners, our women's business centers, our small business development centers, our SCORE mentors, and our veteran business outreach centers think of them as extensions of the SBA, the Small Business Administration, throughout the country. And they're doing one-on-one mentoring and counseling and technical assistance for business owners who are navigating the pandemic economy. And so through them, they have been really going through and seeing how can we improve, how can we help these business models strengthen. We hear a lot of businesses transitioning more online. How can we get a more virtual sales experience, improving apps for sales, reaching more customers and clients through a virtual experience, and like others have mentioned, just being prepared and taking the safety precaution measures through PPE and necessary social distancing practices that need to be in place in storefronts and retail locations.
Awesome. So Anna, you actually brought up a really good point that I want to touch upon. I mentioned earlier the unemployment rate is over 11%. So, for recent grads of college, what kind of advice can you give them specifically if they're looking for jobs either today or in the near future? You mentioned that McDonald's is hiring and looking for budding entrepreneurs. So if I'm a budding entrepreneur or I'm a recent grad and I'm interested in working for McDonald's, walk us through that. Can you give us a little bit more information? What other advice do you have for those that are in the job market right now, the job hunt?
So certainly there are opportunities, and McDonald's is going out through their franchising teams and looking, going to college campuses and looking to bring in Hispanic talent on the corporate level. And then on the entrepreneur level, they are also avidly seeking candidates. So I think that a lot of good things were mentioned about skill sets and how to prepare yourself and passion, and we spoke about those things. I think one thing that it's going to take today to really get there is courage also. So you can't be afraid to fail. You got to be able to step out there. As a woman, as a Hispanic woman, the position that I hold leading the Hispanic operators, I'm the first woman in 47 years to hold that position. And nobody invited me to the table. So you have to have a little courage and be willing to fall. I think it's important to surround yourself with a good network. And so I am not a millennial and I'm not into social media, but I have an email and I'm happy to make myself accessible to anyone who would like to reach out. And I think mentors and networks are certainly crucial to success at whatever level you are. I think, Stephen spoke about some great books. The why of why you do things, I think, is so important, and Sinek does say it best. But that network that helps you turn on to the best book or to the best situations that maybe someone's been there already and can help you through. So I think paying it forward has a lot to do, and I would encourage all of the youth, that's younger people that are listening, to remember that when you get to where you want to be, that there will always be those that you can lift, and to come back to the community and help.
Great. Mark, so I hear that you have a little bit of an untraditional path or journey to your current career. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what sort of adjustments you've had to make and how you kind of made it to where you are today?
Well, I didn't have any kind of natural political connections when I graduated college, but I knew I wanted to be in politics. And so, that was my motivation, right? And we talk about like, what's your why? That was my why, but it also took a self-belief that I could, kind of break down any barrier that I thought was put in my way. But what I also needed to do is that I needed to take the time to learn things along each step of the way. And that's what I encourage people to do as well. In staff that I've had in the past on my time on the Hill, I feel like a lot of people want to move on to the next step before they're ready. And there's a learning process. Like you need to be motivated, surely, but you've got to, at each step along the way, be sure you're learning the skills that are necessary to take the next step. And so that's what I did. I took the time. I understood each job would lead to the next one. And I wasn't, I don't want to say I didn't move along too fast, but I also didn't take my time. When you find yourself kind of, and I stated this earlier, when you feel comfortable in your current situation, then it's time to move on. And so every time I kind of felt that itch, that I felt like I was getting too comfortable, then it was time for me to go. And so I moved up through, kind of the congressional ranks, and then I realized that it was my time to leave Capitol Hill and for a new adventure. So here I find myself at a, 4-person lobby shop trying to help build a small business.
Awesome. Thank you. Therese, you talked a little bit about being the owner of a yogurt company. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you went from that to going on the Hill. What was that journey like, and kind of what advice do you have for those that are listening in now as well?
Well, similar to Mark, I actually had no political experience coming into this role, no background in government. I had been running my own business manufacturing company for 5 years. We made a difficult decision to close and to move on to other opportunities. And the transition was actually fantastic. I was at that point really ready for a new chapter in my career. And I actually know, and I've been told that one of the reasons I was hired was because of my background being a previous small business owner, having hold certifications like a women-owned small business owner, MBE, which is Minority Business Enterprise as well. That because of initiating and building a company from the ground up, selling into grocery, selling into universities, selling into federal contractors, their corporate cafeterias, the hand holding that maybe some other candidates may have needed I was specifically told that you've been able to build something and move it right on your own. So I don't have time to hold your hand through navigating the Senate and how this all works. So come on board and run with it, right? So that was sort of my experience in hiring and in the transition. Just like building a company, I had to build my own network of advisors for this job. Don't think you can just, do it on your own and know everything when you start, because my knowledge was basically ground zero. So I had to really get to know my counterparts on the chairman's staff, like Senator Rubio's staff, because we need to work together, right, to get anything accomplished. I need to understand and really develop relationships with the agency that we oversee. So those are, the political appointees, as well as the career personnel there as well. I have gotten and developed quite strong relationships that they're in this time, where we can't meet face to face, we're constantly calling each other on the phone and talking to understand what can we be doing now to help move the needle forward for small businesses around the country. So it's those skill sets that I learned in entrepreneurship that led me to my current role. And when I think about it, 2 years ago, when I was in the middle of closing my company, I couldn't tell you what was going to happen next. But I often think that you're always in the position you need to be at the time you need to be in. And I can't imagine being anywhere else right now but where I am, navigating and helping to navigate economic relief for small businesses around this country during this time.
Awesome. Stephen, I have a little bit of a different question for you.
Okay.
So beyond bootstrapping and using your own funds, where can an entrepreneur look to find alternative forms of capital to either start or grow a new enterprise in this economic landscape?
Angel investors would be one. So an angel investor is typically someone who has had personal career success, has retired typically early, and they want to invest their capital and pour into the next generation. And there are angel networks that are state-specific, regional. If you search that term, you'll begin to get some information. Next, you have crowdfunding. That is something we've seen demonstrated. I'm here on a political motivated context, but President Obama showed us how to do that. And that exists. In fact, there's a young man who just launched a coffee company here in Atlanta, totally crowdsourced funding. He raised $150,000 and his business is off and running. So don't discount crowdfunding in this environment. In this environment, people are willing to help in this environment. The other thing to think about is there are microfinance groups. In certain cultural contexts, the word is SUSA. So you have microfinance groups where people come together and they make those dollars available. I see those coming together now. Again, this notion of giving back. The final thing I would say is think about your career as a launching pad to get to your entrepreneurial endeavor. The line may not be as straight as we want it to be. I've heard some people say that success is no longer a ladder, it's a jungle gym. So there's a lot of different angles to get to the top. So think about that first job you take, so to speak, as the post-educational business school to get to your entrepreneurial destination. I'll give you an example. Female, corporate, always wanted to be a baker. In this environment, because of some of the federal money available, she has launched a baking enterprise and is already in the black. So just think about this as a chance where what she learned in the corporate context was accounting, business management, how to do the books, how to build a business plan. All of that got leveraged as she made her entrepreneurial move. So think about that as well. Can I say one more thing and then I'll stop?
Yeah, definitely.
To your previous comment, I just want the young people to know how valuable they are right now. You are valuable, right? People in leadership in companies, they know if you increase diversity at the senior levels, profitability actually goes up. No one disagrees with that anymore. So you are so valuable right now in terms of being employable. And so many people have stopped hiring that for those companies that are in the marketplace, there's a great opportunity to get matched up. Like McDonald's, we are still actively hiring both on our enterprise side and in the field. So there are people out there hiring. You could find a great home because you're so valuable right now. Thank you,
So
Nina.
Stephen, I want to ask a follow-up question to that. So where can we find those opportunities? Like, for example, you mentioned your company's hiring. Like, where can we find that?
So if I'm a young person right now, I think the best place to go is use the virtual career seminar route to really experiment with a lot of things before you feel like you have to make a real commitment. All of that is accessible through their mechanisms at colleges. That's how we do it. We go to the college and we set up a time. We do a virtual seminar on our career and our industry and use it as a chance to mutually educate each other. So that's one way to do it. So that's through your traditional college system. Second, everybody's talked about mentors. Your mentors can help you get access to opportunities right now. The third thing I'll say is take advantage of social media. I'm not a millennial either, you can probably tell, but I've hired a few people off of social media that reach out to me. Take advantage of it. The world is so flat right now because of what we're going through.
Right. Awesome. So we actually have a question from the audience, and it relates to mentorship. And so what is the best way, and I get this a lot whenever we do panels, this question is so popular. Everyone talks about the importance of mentorship, but what's the best way to approach a mentor? Do you just say like, hey, can you be my mentor? Or, you know, how do you do that? So that's a question from the audience. I'll open it up to any of the four of you if you want to take it.
I don't have the book answer. So in my world, yes, you do. You just say, you know, in our world, you know, do you have the time? So company people will reach out and say, you know, this is what my expectation is. And so, you know, you set up a realistic expectation on both parts. And I think you do. I'm sure there's a much more technological way to do it. But in my case, yeah, you just ask.
Can I just, yeah, real quick, here's what I would say. Figure out where you want to be personally and professionally. Your mentor should be somebody that you admire both professionally, and I think we all know that, but also personally. That's number one. Number two, when you approach your mentor, tell them where you are trying to go personally and professionally so they see it and they know they can actually help you. And number three, here's how I would ask. Here's where I'm heading. I would say, Nina, I'm trying to get to XYZ personally and professionally. What I'm asking you to do is meet with me 4 times a year. Once in person, if we ever get past COVID, 3 times by phone. The meetings will be no longer than 45 minutes. And in those meetings, what I want to talk to you about is the goals I've set for myself, what I accomplished last quarter, what I'm trying to accomplish in the forward quarter, get your advice, constructive criticism, and access to relationships you think you have to help me advance in my career. That's how you ask for a mentor.
Awesome. So I'll just add into, for me, I mean, of course, this was pre-COVID, but I love just asking the person that I admire or would I want to be in her position, just asking them if they have time for a 10, 15-minute coffee and just take it from there. See, I think it's also important to have a mentor that you personally have a connection with. Not every person, of course, will you be able to gel with. So I think just asking for a coffee, or in this time asking, hey, do you have time for just a quick 10-minute, 15-minute phone call? I'd love to know how you were able to get to where you are. Flattery is always nice. You know, you have this amazing position. I'd love to take, just 10 minutes to hear how you got there. And I don't think most people are not going to say no. So I would go from there. I don't know, Therese and Mark, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, Nina, I think you're spot on. Just talking from my perspective and who my mentor was, he was my first chief of staff, and he's been hugely instrumental in guiding me in and around DC, especially as I talked about earlier, not having any kind of political background. And the fact that we gel so well personality-wise, we've just become great friends now later in life. And so much so that he's not even as much of a mentor to me anymore as he is a very good friend. And so I think, you'll find the right, you struck the right chord with someone when, 10, 15 years down the line, if you see them, you won't ever be really equal because they're that much further ahead of you career-wise. But if you're a good friend with them, then I think you've picked the right course. And if you can look back and say, oh my goodness, like I couldn't have done this without him.
Awesome. Therese, do you have anything? Another question? Okay, go ahead.
It's funny. My mentors have all been unexpected, and I wish I had a great strategy, but don't. I basically have different interests, and in pursuing those interests, I've gotten to know people along the way. For example, I brought an event to my law school, and in doing that, I connected with a professor actually at another university, right? It's a little odd, but anyway, and trying to describe it. But he's been one of my key advisors. We have never worked together other than planning that event and bringing it to campus. Every time I've had a career pivot or need a direction on how to have what I would say are nerve-wracking conversations, like negotiating a job offer, right, before accepting it, asking for a raise, asking for a change in title, all these things. He's been the one to help position me for those difficult but important and necessary conversations in career. I've also been able to work with people in my current role, and some of them are from the Small Business Administration. Some of them are no longer there, actually, and help to, in their new roles, can actually give me a different perspective and kind of help me understand how, whether it's programs work or how things function, but in a less formal way than they were able to while they were working at the agency, if that makes sense. So conversations have become more fluid, more personal, more open in that way, because essentially our roles have changed and our relationships have changed. But I think as you work on your own companies and you build your own vision, as you enter into the career and professional world, you're just going to meet people. And as you meet people, you're going to start to figure out who you get along with, who you find interesting and you want to know more about. And you're just going to engage in those conversations and show interest and follow up with those people.
Awesome. So, Teresa, I'll stay with you. So from a policy perspective, outside of the PPP and the CARES Act, what other policy proposals do you think Congress and the White House should consider to spur entrepreneurship? And do you actually see anything coming down the pipeline that you think is relevant to share with us?
So this is a challenging question, difficult question. We're in the middle of negotiating a CARES 4 package is what we're calling it informally, which is just a fourth package of relief due to COVID-19. So outside of CARES, we do work and pass legislation. One of the hardest things to do, I think, is to pass legislation, to actually get the Senate and the House to agree and have the president sign it into law. It is not easy. It is not done that often, but it does happen. I think day to day, and something I work on and I have a lot of interest in, is in small business federal contracting. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, don't worry. It's just, think about it as a whole other avenue of sales that you can potentially pursue. And what I mean by that is essentially supplying the federal government, who is the world's largest purchaser of goods and services on this planet, right? Spends over $500 billion a year, of which 23% of that is set aside for small businesses to pursue as business to supply the government. So I always think day to day, what can we do to strengthen small businesses that contract and supply the federal government? What programs can we strengthen and improve? So that's always part of my work. So legislation, policies that help to increase small business suppliers to the federal government is what I work on. I think also, because it's so challenging to pass law, other ways to think about opportunities for entrepreneurship and other avenues to pursue, say, outside the federal government, Congress, and the White House, always think about what opportunities your universities have in place, like the small business incubators and entrepreneurship incubators you have on campus. You should know those outlets, right? And should have relationships going with those, call them departments or programs in your schools. The Small Business Administration as well and their services. You should be familiar with those current programs, either through lending, if you're looking for loans, working capital or capital for real estate or equipment. Those are other avenues to think about and to pursue.
Thank you. We got so many good resources from this panel. Thank you so much, Anna, Mark, Stephen, and Therese. That was great information. We know we have to read necessary endings and storytelling. We know that there's a lot of opportunities now for increased access. So we need to make sure that we're asking for those phone calls, that we're increasing our network, that we're attending webinars and conferences like the CHLI Future Leaders Conference. Thank you so much. This was great. And I'm handing it back to CHLI. Thank you.
Thanks, Nina.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Nina, and everyone else. As Nina mentioned, I loved hearing all of the key things on people skills, people first, valuing ourselves, team building, don't be afraid to fail, being committed, hardworking, love the fact about storytelling and sales, and everything else really ends up being about relationships, whether they're virtual or in person. It was interesting. I was thinking back to when I was in high school. Nobody said make sure you take 2 typing classes, or anything like that, because I remember I kept thinking I was going to be a great secretary, and so of course I took typing 1 and typing 2. So thanks again for that discussion. For those of you, if you have any questions about the books maybe that were mentioned or any of the other tips like that, please include some of the questions in there. We'll be happy to answer them as we go along. Also include any other questions or comments you have on Twitter for us, and we can respond that way as well, and or get the different panelists engaged as well. So now we're going to switch to our keynote speaker. Super excited because you're all in for a really nice treat. Daniel Botero is the author of Mastering College to Career, and he's also a motivational speaker. He has dedicated himself to helping college students find their path towards their dream job. Daniel has agreed to join us as well for a Q&A session during the end when we do like a networking time, because that will help facilitate kind of more organic and last-minute questions. So note your questions as well and be prepared to engage with him live at 3:30. And so with that, I'm going to pass it on to Daniel. You're on, dear.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and, talk to all the students that might be very concerned about what's going on with the job market and maybe figuring out that, it is a difficult time to find a job, but it is not impossible. And so what I want to do today with the 25 minutes that we have is I want to show you how you can get your dream job in this job market that we're currently in right now and how you can do that instantly in the next 30 to 60 days. So I'm going to share my screen. Make sure that you guys can see that. Okay, perfect. And then take notes because I'm telling you guys, this is big. All right. So I'm going to show you how you can instantly beat over 90% of other applicants so that you're able to get more interviews, which will lead to more internships and will lead to more full-time jobs, even with what's going on in the job market today. And I understand that this is a big claim. And so I'm going to show you why we can do this. And the reason is that there is a hidden job market. And I know that you're probably thinking, how can this be? And the reality is that the job market is very, very similar to an iceberg. And what you see in the top is the jobs that are listed in the job boards. But what you don't see is what's underneath it, which is the hidden job market, where over 80% of jobs are filled, right? And the reality is that most college students don't know how to access these jobs. Now, I want to challenge you, go on Google after this conference and Google, how do most people find their job? And you're going to figure out that it's through networking and through company referrals. And that is what the job market is. And what I'm going to show you in the next 20 minutes is how you can access these jobs in a predictable and a consistent way. So no matter if you are afraid that your GPA is not strong enough, no matter if you think that you don't have 4 internships and you don't have the exact qualifications that the companies are looking for, and it doesn't matter if you attended a core school or not, because if you can access the hidden job market, then it doesn't matter as much. And I'm going to show you how. And so let me tell you a little bit more about myself and why I come up with this strategy. So before COVID, I used to travel a lot to all different types of university and events speaking on this topic. I've even been recognized by my university because of the work that I'm doing with helping college students and giving the most prestigious award that a young alumni could receive. And the way that I help students get jobs is that I started a podcast that is a top-rated podcast on iTunes, and where I have over 150 episodes where I interviewed the world's experts on these topics. Everyone from university presidents, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, even recruiters, talent acquisitions, professors, you name it. I've even gone ahead and wrote the playbook on how to get jobs, which when I launched it last year became an Amazon #1 bestseller, and all the major topics that are relevant to you as a college student, which is interviews, internships, and career guides. And what I'm most proud of and what's helped most students is my Mastering College to Career Academy, in which the content that you're learning today, what you're about to learn, comes from. But here's the thing, I have not always been the success that you see today, right? I was not born a best-selling author. The reality is I still struggle with spelling and grammar. And very much like a lot of students here, I was a first-generation minority college student, grew up in a low-income family. I'm originally from Colombia, moved to the United States with just me and my mom in pursuit of the American dream. To me, school came extremely difficult. It's not natural for me to try to study. I struggle with memorization. You can even see that I even sometimes mess up some words around because school did not come easy to me. But I knew that if I wanted to have the American dream, I needed to go to college. And to the point that when I graduated from high school, I had to take my first 2 semesters of community college were remedial classes to help me get to college level, right? And so what I had to do is I knew that if I didn't have the right GPA and I didn't have the family connections to get into a big job, I had to figure out another way to get into a big company and to get into my dream job. And because of that, I worked really, really hard, and I was able to find a system to help me access the hidden job market, which is what I'm going to show you today. And because of that, I was able to get multiple job offers from Fortune 500 companies and started my career at PepsiCo in their management training program. And what I didn't realize, which I know now, is that your first job out of college really sets the foundation for the rest of your professional career. You can either make things extremely easy for you or extremely hard. And when I realized that, I wanted that for everybody else, because not only was I going to a job every single Monday that I enjoyed, that I was passionate about, that I was learning so much and I was growing so much, but I was instantly right out of college making 3 times more than what my mom was making. And because of that, that allowed me to have a very, very strong foundation financially. And within the first 5 years of college, I was able to buy a house, pay off all my student loans, and even buy a really nice engagement ring for my now wife. And that is what I want from you. And this is what I want to spend the next 15, 20 minutes is really driving and explaining to you how this is. And I'm going to do this by sharing with you 3 secrets. And during these 3 secrets, if you execute this, the answers to the secrets, you will find a job in the next 90 days. So secret number 1, why using online job portals like Handshake and Indeed are really destroying your chances of getting hired. Secret number 2, the only factor that determines who gets hired for a position, and let me tell you, it is not your GPA, it's not the school that attended, and it's not your experience. And then secret number 3, the number 1 way to make yourself the obvious candidate for any position out there. So let's get started. Secret number 1, why using job portals is destroying your chances of getting hired. So let's talk about why that is, right? Let's talk about the old and hard way of doing things. You wake up every morning, if you're a recent grad or maybe didn't have a summer internship, and you get on your computer. You hop on all the job boards and you start looking for jobs that you meet the minimal qualifications for. And then you find them and you get all excited, like, oh, I can do this job. I look at the job description and I meet 7 out of the 10 things that they're looking for. So you go and you submit your perfectly crafted resume, and then you wait and you wait, and then you finally get an email, and it's a generic rejection email saying, sorry, we've decided to go on with another candidate. And you continue to do this all over and all over, all over, all over. But that's insane, right? And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So let me kind of walk you through what happens when you submit your resume online, right? So in a normal economy, if we were given this presentation a year ago, anytime a company will put out a job, they get an average of 200 applicants. So that's a lot of applicants. And the reality is that the companies just don't have the time to review every single applicant word for word. So what they do is that they're going to just try to select that whoever they think is the best 10 candidates and bring them in for an interview. No, that's only 5% of total applicants. And then one person gets the job. Now, what do you think is happening? Because there's so many people that have lost their job, so many people are graduating, and people want to work, right? That application number during a recession or even times like this dramatically increases. So you're no longer competing for one job with hundreds of people. You're not competing for the same jobs for thousands of people. How do companies handle all those applications? They use software called an applicant tracking system, and virtually every company now uses an applicant tracking system. And I understand, like, what is an applicant tracking system? Because as a college student, I didn't even know this existed. And so what an applicant tracking system, it is kind of what the name implies it to be. It is a piece of software that allows companies to rank resumes. So a recruiter or a hiring manager doesn't have to review thousands of applications. They can review what the system thinks is the right candidates, right? Whatever the right keywords was put into there is going to pull out the resumes that match that, whether it's a certain GPA, whether it's a couple of internships, whether it's a particular school that they want to recruit from. And so when does your resume get seen by a human versus the applicant tracking system? And here's the reality. Applicant tracking systems are now integrated with all job boards, and anytime that you apply online, whether it's through Handshake, LinkedIn, Monster, Indeed, the company's website itself is going to go through the applicant tracking system. And so what happens is this, right? What that means to you is that your resume doesn't have the right keywords. It's going to be very hard to go past the applicant tracking system. And it's really, really hard to know what the right keywords are. We can assume what they are based on a job description, but we don't know for sure, which means that you are leaving your job search to luck. And so we want to take the luck away from that. But let's say that you got really lucky and you were one of the handful of people that passed the applicant tracking system. You had the right keywords. Well, not so fast, because there's another wall. And I hope you're understanding and you're seeing why applying online is extremely difficult to get noticed. Because after the applicant tracking system, recruiters still have to review hundreds of applications. And so that is why recruiters only spend an average of 6 seconds per resume, which is why when you go to your career service, they're telling you to bold this, put the dates on the right-hand side, and so on. So the question that you really need to be asking is, how do you bypass the applicant tracking system and get your resume the actual seen by a human being? And the answer is stop applying online, because you're just destroying your odds. Applying online is like telling us that you want to become rich, and your strategy to become rich is not starting a business, but it's playing the lottery. And sure, we hear in the news that some people become rich playing the lottery, but the vast, vast majority of people don't. So if you want to get a job, you need to focus on getting access to the hidden job market, because statistically speaking, that's where 80% of jobs are being filled. Now, why does the hidden job market even exist? Why not just put all the jobs there? Why not just companies hired through the job boards? Well, here's the reason, right? Because current employees are better qualified to identify who the best candidates are. So what companies are going to do is that they're going to incentivize their current employers to say, well, if we're hiring in your department and you know what makes a successful worker, why don't you tell us, do you know anybody? And so companies actually incentivize their workers and give them bonuses when they refer somebody in the company. And when I learned this, that to me was one of the biggest changes, because when I learned that PepsiCo was going to give me a $1,500 bonus to bring in my friends to go work for their company so their life can also change for the better, that is when I realized what the problem was, right? This is the problem that all college students are facing right now. Because we're so used to using the internet for everything else, it's made applying online easier. And because it's made it easier, it's made so many more people to apply online, right? So because so many people apply online, it is very, very hard to get noticed, right? You see, now you get thousands of people applying for one job. So because of this, the most qualified candidate is rarely getting the job. And the reason is because they're not getting noticed. So in order for you to land your dream job, visibility becomes more important than ability for you to get to the interview stage. Once you get to the interview, then you can showcase your ability and you're able to get the job, which means that your GPA, experience, and even the school that attended is no longer the most important thing when it comes to getting your dream job. And so what is the answer? If you want to dramatically increase your chances of landing your dream job, you need to access the hidden job market. And so that is what we're going to focus on, secret number 2. So what is the only factor that determines who gets hired for a position right out of college? And in order for me to give you the answers to secret number 2, I need to answer this question that I get all the time. Why would companies hire recent college grads versus hiring somebody who has 3 to 5 years of experience, knowing that a lot of those people are now looking for the job? So there's 5 reasons to this. And the 5th reason is the answer to secret number 2. So reason number 1, recent college grads and college students are just cheaper, right? They can pay you a lot less to do the same work. Number 2, you're more innovative. You come from ideas. You spend the last 4 to 6 years in an environment where they foster innovation. You don't have bad habits, right? You're a blank slate, and you have this eagerness to learn. But number 5, the most important reason and why companies hire college students and recent college grads over people with experience is you have more long-term potential. And long-term potential is more important than experience in the beginning of your career. So what is the only factor that determines who gets hired for a position right out of college? It is potential. Now the question is, how do you prove potential? And so there's 2 steps that I've designed to help you prove potential. So step number 1, you need to control how others perceive you. And then step number 2, you need to prove that you understand the problem that companies have and that you have a plan to fix it. So let's go through each one and let's go into a little bit more detail. So number 1, how do you control how others perceive you? You build a personal brand, right? And as a college student, this can sound very intimidating. Like, how do I even build a personal brand? So there's 3 elements to building a personal brand for a college student, and I'm going to walk you through all 3 of them right now. So number 1, identity. You need to have an idea of what you want to be known for. Have clarity of what your goals are. So here's an example of a student I've mentored. Her name is Ashley. She has complete clarity of what she wants to do, so her LinkedIn profile showcases that. Now, number 2, you need to know who your target audience is, because you cannot be the ideal candidate for everybody. And once you know that, then you can target them. So in this scenario, Ashley wants to work in the hospitality industry in Orlando, Florida. She's extremely passionate about people, training and development. And so that is her target audience. And then number 3, you have to create content that is relevant and that it builds what you want to be known for. So in this scenario, Ashley is building great content that shows why she is a perfect candidate for the hospitality industry. And for her and I received this text message from Ashley literally maybe 4 weeks ago. So in the middle of a pandemic, a recruiter connected with her on LinkedIn. She had a 12-minute interview and received a job offer 2 hours later because Ashley had built a personal brand, right? So when you build a personal brand, you bulletproof your career. Number two, how do you prove that you understand the problem and have a plan to fix it, right? So let's understand why companies hire in the first place. When companies hire, it's because they have a problem and they think that by investing their money in hiring somebody, that is the best way to fix it. So you as a college student, you need to identify why does the company is hiring for this position. And you need to be able to create a plan to show them why you have the most potential to do that. And so let me show you with another student example. This is Shub. He's a student that I mentor as well. His dream job is to work for the NBA. Now, for 4 months before COVID even started, he had been applying for jobs and gotten no results. His applications being lost in the applicant tracking system, right? But once he's narrowed down his search and he starts accessing the hidden job market and going directly to the decision makers, he identifies that he wants to work for an NBA team and he wants to go into inside sales. So once he understands the problem of why companies are hired, he created a document to show his future boss or the decision maker why he understands the problem and how he solves it. So it's not just your resume. He creates a 30, 60, 90-day game plan explaining how he would sell more tickets and become the ideal candidate, solving the company's problem. And the reality is that all of us have $1 million brand and all of us have the potential to get our dream job. You just need to be able to have the right strategies and the right game plan. So to access the hidden job market, you need to know two things, right? Number one, you need to have a method for proving your potential, which we just covered in secret number 2, which is personal branding and understanding the problem and creating a solution. And number 2, you need to know who you prove it to, which is where we're going to go to secret number 3, right? So what is the number one way to make yourself the obvious choice for any position out there? I want you to go directly to the decision maker. And the decision maker is not necessarily the recruiter. The decision maker is most likely going to be your boss, the individual who you report to, the senior engineer, the senior manager, the senior accountant, someone who's been in the company for about 3 to 5 years. And when you do that, you bypass the job boards, you bypass the applicant tracking system, you bypass the 6-second recruiter check, and you bypass weeks of waiting around. Now, how do you even connect with the decision makers? Well, there's 3 steps to do this. Number 1, you need to assess your skills and narrow down your search to 10 companies. And I know that's a little counterintuitive. It's like, you're telling me to lower the number of companies that I apply for? Yes. Because here's what you're probably doing is that you have this shotgun approach of job searching. You're going and applying to every single company you meet the minimum qualifications for. But because you're doing that, you're not taking the time to identify what your dream companies are looking for in the ideal candidates. Because you cannot be the ideal candidate for everybody, but if you focus your approach, you sure can be the ideal candidate for 10 companies. And so the focus here is to have a sniper approach of job searching. Once you do that, once you've narrowed down your list of 10 companies, now it's all about acquiring the information and the connections you need to stand out. It's all about proper research, right? It comes down to really understanding not just the company, right? Not just go to the company's website and call it a day, but understands the role and understand the team and understand the decision maker, right? So proper research is the key here, because what most of you are currently doing is going to the company's website, reading the home page, reading the mission and vision, and calling it a day. And that is just not enough. I want you to be thoroughly informed about the company. And when you do this, you execute the 10-5-1 strategy, which is 10 companies, 5 connections per company, and build one relationship that gives you the referral so that you have access to the hidden job market. And then number 3 is, now that you know your top 10 companies, you've identified the decision maker, you need to achieve success by connecting and impressing them. And how do you do that? Well, we covered that in secret number 2, and you do that by personal branding and creating a potential proof document, right? And when you put all this together, this is what I call the Mastering College to Career way. Step number 1, assess your skills and narrow down your top 10 companies. Step number 2, you acquire the information that you need and acquire the connections, right? So who are the decision makers in those top 10 companies? And then step number 3 you want to position yourself as the ideal candidate. So you start by building your personal brand and showing them why you have the solution to their problem. And when you do this, you access the hidden job market, you implement the 3 A's, assess, acquire, and achieve. You essentially bulletproof your career, and it doesn't matter what is going on with the market, because even right now, when we have 11% unemployment rate, that means that there's still a lot of jobs available. And so when you execute this, you're going to find success, like the thousands of students that I've worked with that have gotten jobs with all the top companies. And so I'm just going to go through a little bit. And so what I know that we covered a lot in 20 minutes, what we talked about with this presentation is that CHLI has actually been so nice to pay and buy books for every single one of you that's in this conference. So you guys, the first 50 people that go to masteringcollegetocareer.com/CHLI and put CHLI, all capital letters, will be shipped a physical copy of my book. So thank you so much, CHLI, for doing this. And if we have more than 50 people that claim the book, you're going to get access to the digital version. So regardless, all of you are going to get a copy of the book that's going to allow you to execute the strategies that I quickly went over in 30 minutes. So if we have any more questions, I know that I'm going to stick around and answer them later on. But this is how you can get a job during times like this. Let me just stop sharing. And I'll hand it over to you, Marianne. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Daniel. I kept thinking too, this is also a great opportunity. So even if you have a really good job now, or you've got a job now and you're thinking maybe, when the COVID stuff ends, maybe, sometime next year I might be looking for something else. It's a perfect time to sharpen the skills, right? So the panel before said use this time to do online classes, to learn, to sharpen your skills, to update all your information. This is perfect. You can use Daniel's information to sharpen all of those skills, and so that, maybe it's not necessarily about looking for the other job quite yet. Maybe it's getting to the next level. Maybe it's to the promotion, or maybe it's also at a certain time is to look for the next job versus the first job. Either way, all the tips are really, really awesome. And I was thinking, Daniel, while you were talking, I'm like, okay, the last few people I've talked to, how have they gotten their job? And they didn't get it online. They got it from talking to somebody, reaching out on LinkedIn, somebody else referred them, the mentor connected them. So very, very much. I love it. And Daniel, stick around with us. Yes, we're giving away the books so that people can really take the time right now. If you're a book person, you'll get a book. If you're a digital person, you'll get the link. And we'd love to be able to ask Daniel some questions. So we're gonna shift now, and I've got another treat here. We've got one of our congressional board members joining us. I'm not sure if he's live from Texas, but we've got Congressman Will Flores from Texas, who has never missed a Future Leaders Conference and is always encouraging and supporting. So I'm going to pass it on to Congressman Will Flores.
Marianne, can you see me? Oh, I've got to unmute.
We can hear you, dear. I can't see you yet.
Okay. Let me try to make my camera work. It was
all right.
earlier.
We do all these test runs, and then when it's like, go, and we get another minute.
let me log on again. Hang on just a minute.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry.
So, Congressman is doing that. Jot down some questions for Daniel, and so that he can kind of go through some of that information as well. We have a team who can share some of those questions with him a little bit in advance as well, and he can chime in during that networking time. We'll stop the recording and we'll make it live so that you can interact with everyone. And so make sure you've got some information ready to go and to share with him. I'm sure that if it's not you looking for an opportunity, an internship, a job, there's probably someone from one of your colleagues who might be looking for those kinds of opportunities. So we want to keep keep that going, and we want to be supportive during this time. You've seen that we've got some awesome speakers. We've got some big supporters and people who really want to help you and help each other out. So we want to make sure that we're of service here to you during this time. And I'm just checking to see if we have any other questions, anything that may have come up. Couple of things too that Daniel had mentioned was in regards to the branding. If you're looking for a job specifically, make sure if you don't already have a LinkedIn profile, Daniel mentioned that. Make sure that you set up your LinkedIn profile and that you put in all of the key information. You can also just go and check out, for example, other people and some of your mentors and check out what they have on their profiles as well. So we wanted to just check in to see if a congressman is going to join us. If not, we may kind of do a pause and start with the next panel. So he may be coming back. Again, it's kind of a little technical thing, not sure where he's at. So I'm going to go ahead with the next group. I think we have everybody on board ready to go anyway. So let me go ahead and get started here with our next panel. So the next panel, of course, is related to technology and being able to leverage all of that. What I want to make sure that you have an opportunity here is to learn a little bit about Keith and the panelists that are going to be joining him. So Keith Fernandez is the Director of Communications at TechNet. Prior to joining that team, he was at Univision, and then he spent a number of years with the Honorable Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, who is a congresswoman, was a congress member representing Florida. She's also one of the founding members of the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, and we kind of always refer to her as our Chili Madrina. Keith was also an intern of the internship program that was sponsored by Ford Motor Company in 2006. So welcome, all yours, Keith, and your opportunity to introduce yourself, share a little bit more, and then introduce the panel. All right, I see Laura and Alex have joined. All right. I think Keith is just getting the, we see your initials, Keith. We know you're in the house.
It appears Keith is having some technical difficulties, but Congressman Bill Flores is back, so we could take this time to promote him to.
Okay, all right. All right. Just like we would if we were on Capitol Hill, the congressman is entered. Let's give him the floor. Congressman.
Thanks for inviting me again, and let me make sure I'm unmuted. Sorry about that.
No, I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't know. When I first log on, I get a camera signal, and then it stops. And this is the first time I've had this difficulty with WebEx. But first of all, let me thank you for joining us, or asking me to join you again. CHLI is one of my favorite organizations, as you're well aware, because I think they have such a great impact on young people that are interested in public service and then service and other sectors of our economy. Previous Future Leaders Conferences have proven to be very successful in inspiring students to become local, national, and global leaders. And I know that today's conference is not going to be any different. For all of you young people here, I want to commend you for being here and taking the initiative to step up and more about becoming a leader. And about, given today's topic, becoming a potential entrepreneur. Normally at this time of the conversation, I would ask questions, but this meeting format doesn't allow us to do that very efficiently, so I will skip that. I just want to spend a couple of minutes saying that, I watched the last presentation, and I thought that was incredibly helpful. And actually, I was taking notes because as I make a transition at the end of this current Congress, from serving here to going back into the private sector, I thought maybe I need to brush up on my job search skills. So just like you, I have a lot to learn here today, and I hope that you become empowered to continue to strive to be your best that you can be throughout your remaining college years and through your future careers. I'd like to talk about the dash. Now, what do you mean, or what do you think I mean when I talk about the dash? Well, someday all of us are going to pass away. We know that. And on your grave marker, there's going to be a date of birth and there's going to be a date that you left. And in between that is a dash between those two dates. And that dash is what is going to define your life. It's what you did during the date you came to this earth and the date you left it. And so what I'm going to do is talk about ways that you can have an impact in your dash. I think that's what we should all strive to do, is to make an impact. Now, I grew up as the son of a rancher and out in West Texas. And every day before I left that house, my dad used to say, "Go make a hand." So, and his saying of "go make a hand" was the way that's the way he used to tell me in his ranch way of, go make the world a better place, go have an impact. So there used to be a late night show that would have the top 10 countdown of things on a particular subject. And so I'm going to go through the top 10 things that you could do to make an impact as you move forward in life. So number 10 is to study hard and to keep learning. Number 9 is to find mentors throughout your life and career. Number 8 is to be very wise in choosing your friends. There are friends that will build you up, and there are friends that will tear you down. So make sure that you find friends that will help build you up and not tear you down and not take you down paths that you shouldn't go. Number 7 is, and you've heard that a little bit today in terms of being an entrepreneur, and that is to think outside the box. But while you think outside the box, make sure that your thinking outside the box is always grounded in the real world. Because if thinking outside the box doesn't apply to the real world, if you have an out-of-the-box solution that doesn't fit real world needs, then you haven't really done anything. So number 6, and this is very important, treat others the way you want to be treated. No matter if you're the CEO of a company, like I was fortunate to be able to do, or you're the person that cleans the office at night of that CEO. All of you are the same. All of you put your pants on or skirts on the same way every day. So remember that. Treat everybody the way you want to be treated. Number 5, and this is a big one, watch out for excessive pride. This is the biggest downfall of people that I have seen in Washington and out in the rest of the world as well. So if you think about it, it's okay to be proud of what you've done, but watch out for being prideful. Pride leads to arrogance. Arrogance leads to narcissism, and narcissism leads to an empty and lonely life. And if you think about it, the only person that likes an arrogant person is that arrogant person. And so, as I said before, one of the ways to check pride is to remember that you always put your pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else in the world. Number 4, live a balanced life. Make sure that you have time for work, family, play, and time for reflection to think about the future and or your faith. And so, number 3, try to give more to this world than you take from this world. Number 2 is to remember the 10 Commandments. It'll answer almost every difficult question. Number 1 is try to figure out why God put you on this earth. And he put you on this earth for a reason. Find that reason and do your best to fulfill it. And that way, if you do these 10 things, you will have a dramatic impact, not only on the world, but also on your family and you and the people around you. And so, as you face new chapters in life, always remember you won't waste your talents and your education if you use them in service to others, no matter how far life takes you. Never forget where you came from. And never forget the values and principles and characters that inspired you along the way. So, again, thank you, Mary Ann, and all of the CHLI team for inviting me, and I hope that you have a great conference.
Yes, well, thank you again. As always, you always have some very inspirational remarks for everyone, and even for, for all of us included here, even if we're not the young participants in this who are benefiting. I want to reinforce what you had said as well, and as some of the speakers said earlier about, making sure that you use that golden rule, that you also live a balanced life. Right now, that's one of the things that we're all kind of learning, or maybe relearning for some people, is how to rebalance our lives. And then the other is, the why. Stephen, in the previous panel discussion, mentioned Start With Why, which is one of the books by Simon Sinek, and Simon Sinek has a lot of other really good information about that. And one of the other colleagues on our board, Congressman Henry Cuellar, does the same thing, and he says the same thing, just as Congressman Bill Flores here, about start with your why. It may take a little extra work to try to figure that out, but that's why we have some friends and some close family as well to kind of sometimes help us with that. So thank you again, Congressman. Very much, always love having you here. Appreciate the time, and thank you very much. Now I'm going to go back to our panel. I believe we've got everyone hopefully ready to go up, and you had an opportunity as well to hear the Congressman, so that's even sweeter. So you might be able to incorporate some of the things that he mentioned and add to the value that he shared. So with that, let's see if we got Keith on, and we've got Alex and Laura, Javier, awesome. Keith, I don't see your beautiful face, dear. Hopefully you can, if not, we'll be able to at least hear you if we're not able to see you right away. And Javier, you just went away too, so I'm not sure. There you go. Okay, there's Javier. All right. Keith, are you chiming back in? Or maybe he's just going to call in. Well, why don't we give Keith here, let's try to figure out, I know the team is working with him to get him on, so let's keep going here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the panelists who are here, and then when Keith comes in, he'll take over. I'm going to ask each of you if you could please share a little bit about your journey, your background, and, because we do have, and this is a Future Leaders Conference, I also want to hear where you went to college and what was your first job. All right? So I'm going to share, so I'm going to give you time to think about this. So I went to the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California. And my first job, like the first official job where I got like paid, right? Because babysitting money didn't really count because my mom got the money. It was cleaning the office of my mom and dad's boss. And my best friend and I convinced our parents to ask the boss that we could do it because we also used it as girlfriend time. And we cleaned his office twice a week after 5 o'clock. So that was my first job. Javier, how about yours?
Hey, Marianne. Yeah, so I'm a graduate. Javier Hernandez with Google here. I graduated from Florida International University in Miami. I think there's a very Miami-heavy panel you got here today. And my first job was at McDonald's right near my high school. So the great benefit of having the location of the specific McDonald's in which I worked was that it was so close to my high school that I was actually one of the more popular. It helped my popularity a whole lot, only because I was able to just like slip in an extra apple pie or two to my friends as they came by.
Apple pies either. They don't
yeah.
More. I know.
No, it was the heyday of the apple pie. So, it was a heavy pour on the fries. So definitely upped my popularity for folks near my high school.
That's awesome. Love it. Laura, how about you? Where'd you go to college and what was your first job?
So I went to college at the University of Florida.
Florida again. And my first job, I got really lucky. It was actually Godiva chocolates at the mall. And it was probably the best job I've ever had because I got to take home all the chocolates at the end of the day. I also gained like 15 pounds on the job, but it was a good experience just to like, I got to taste, we were required to try all the truffles. I think that was probably my favorite part about it.
You were required to try them out?
Yeah. So we could
my
explain to customers what they taste like, everything. So it was pretty interesting.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. Okay, how about you, Alex?
Hey everyone, and hey Marianne, thanks for doing this and for the invitation. Like Laura, I'm a Florida Gator as well, born and raised in Miami, but went up north for school. My first job, I had a bunch of different odd jobs before college, but helped with, a moving company, a telemarketing firm, and then helped my mom at her office, just, clearing out whatever was needed in her office, making lists of different things, filing records and all kinds of things. So, it was really my mom. But my first real kind of breakthrough that hooked me and set me on the path that I'm on was my internship with Ileana Ross-Leitonen, which was unpaid. So I know it's not what you asked for in the question, but it really was so important for me in getting me hooked, confirming that I really wanted to pursue this career path that I did, and I'm forever grateful to her. So knowing her relationship to chili, I wanted to make sure I said that on the front end and acknowledged how important she has been to my career.
Yeah, well, we definitely all miss her around Washington, D.C., but she's still on our board. She's still helping out, and like any wonderful and good leader, right, there's like a net of people with a little bit of Ileana love, and so we definitely have her spirit here with us today. And with that is Keith. All right, Keith, we can see you here.
I hope you can. Oh, great. That's great. So it's always a tech guy that has the problems, right? So thanks for picking up the ball, Marianne. I was going to start by saying if it goes well, you get the credit. If it goes bad, you can blame me. So I think we know what's going on here.
We'll split it, Keith. Go ahead. I'm going to mute myself. All yours.
Good. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for being here. Technical difficulties are part of the job. Definitely, we're not on Zoom, so this is one of those things that happen. So first of all, I know Marianne introduced Alex, Javier, and Laura on the Art of Technology panel. I think this is great. I do have to flag at the beginning of this that, you have really 4 people here who went to the best school in the country, the University of Florida and FIU, so, don't be too jealous.
Hey, don't make me scratch you off the panel, you guys, okay? Come on.
But I know we're here to talk about tech, and so I'm just going to jump right into the 3 panelists in order. So Alex, Javier, and Laura, if you guys can address the following question. So as tech evolves, how do you think we can keep up and invest time on the right tools for skill development and impactful results, especially in light of what's been going on lately with COVID, telework, telelearning, telehealth, everything, frankly?
Yeah, so I'll start, and I'm Alex Burgos with Facebook. I joined the company in May 11th, so this is 2 months into the role, and I joined during a period of COVID, so I have not set foot in the office, and it's unclear when I will ever set foot in a physical office. But I think what we've seen is just an acceleration of what was to come, and I think prior to COVID, I would tell you that about 99% of my meetings and my day-to-day interactions with people were either in person or via phone, and maybe occasionally you'd get the 1% that would request something via teleconference, Zoom, or any of the other tools, and that's been completely flipped in this situation. Now everything is via Zoom, Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams, et cetera, different tools, and maybe occasionally you get the 1% of meetings that are just via phone the way they used to be. So I think it's something that was coming and was just probably a matter of gradual change to now all of a sudden having to adapt quickly. And I think that's I think number one, we just need to all be easy on ourselves and recognize that we're all adapting to this in real time at the same time. That I think especially goes for people like me who are also, who work and are also parents. and understanding that teachers are going through this for the first time and really trying to adapt. And some will adapt better than others, no matter what you do, no matter the workplace, the boss, no matter in different situations. Some will, be creative, pick it up seamlessly and have great experiences. And others may struggle and you'll find everything in between. So I think this is just a moment to, I think, really exercise a lot of patience, but recognize the opportunities to be creative and innovative with how we confront this situation. And I think for all of us, this is a crucible. This is a challenge that will be, hopefully we will overcome eventually and get back to some semblance of the normal we used to know. And we'll be telling people about it. And I think that's part of the challenge we have now is how can we stand out? How can we use technology in creative and useful ways that advance the missions of our companies? But let me just be very clear, and this is me working for a tech company, having worked for the tech industry before I took this job. People are still at the center of everything. So, tech can allow this remote working, telehealth, distance learning, et cetera, reality to be better than it would have been earlier in this century. But people still need to remain front and center and top of mind when it comes to our work. Relationship building, the way our previous speaker, went over, that needs to remain at the center of what we think about, how we build our networks, how we connect with people in new jobs or as part of interview processes. So the focus is on tech in this panel. You've got a great bunch of tech representatives here, but never forgetting that people really need to remain at the center of everything we do, because ultimately that's what's going to unlock the path forward and progress, job opportunities, and career advancement.
Yeah, and I actually was going to echo exactly what Alex just said. I think that while a lot of things are changing and folks are finding themselves in entirely new work situations and ways to interact with their coworkers, I think at the end of the day, the human piece of it is something that tends to get lost in this conversation and is extremely important. At the end of the day, I think a lot of what has gotten all of us here has been the relationships we've been able to build over the course of our careers, and I think that's super important. And then talking about the tech piece of it a little bit, and I think one of the things that from the role that I've been doing here at Google, I think one of the things that's become very evident that people have ignored for some time and has become extremely important as more and more people work from home and manage their interactions online is security, right? I think now more than ever, people need to be taking the necessary steps to make sure that they're protecting their accounts, they're protecting the information, that the interactions and work that they're doing across different platforms with fellow team members are being kept secure. And I think, this is obviously an election year, so security is top of mind for a lot of folks in this, policy and political space. But I think that's one of the things that's vulnerabilities have been revealed in many companies, and other companies have been able to demonstrate, the kind of strength of their security infrastructure. But I think each person still has a responsibility to make sure that they're taking that very seriously as well. And I'll also speak really quickly to one piece that I think is important for folks who are kind of college students or college graduates who are getting ready to transition into their careers. I think one of the things that I learned being a digital staffer and a communication staffer going through my career, a lot of times there are going to be a whole bunch of different services and platforms that are going to come in vogue and out of vogue, and folks are going to struggle to really understand where to prioritize their skill development and mastery of these different products and tools. One of the things that I always found really useful as I was developing my skills as a communication and digital professional was really taking the time to understand what was most effective in the goals that we had as an organization or a campaign or whatever it might be, but also taking into account where I wanted to be as a professional 5 years down the line and really identifying what the hard skills, technical skills required to do that work we're going to be, and prioritizing a lot of my time in developing those skills and mastering those platforms. Because I think you're gonna have tools that are gonna be critical for just the day-to-day functions of your job that I think you're gonna need to understand and know how to use. But there's also going to be other platforms and tools that you're going to have to take initiative to really master and understand to develop as a professional if you're interested in going into kind of that tech field or that communications field.
Yeah, I would like to echo a lot of what's already kind of been said, but I feel like there is a time, like now with everything being virtual, like we have access to many virtual resources that I feel like a lot of times we used to not invest as much time in. So I feel like right now is the time to, update your LinkedIn. It's time to like pick up some virtual like workshops, attend virtual conferences where you can learn. And not only me personally, I have found that a lot of the virtual environments has sometimes given me like virtual fatigue. And I've actually found it as very helpful to like also just start reading books. Kind of gets your mind off screen. I know me personally in my position with Bloomberg, like I'm literally on my computer a lot of the times. And it's been a different transition for me as well because I manage a lot of client relationships and I'm so used to being in person with clients. And now it's like adapting to a virtual environment, still making sure people are engaged when you are like either meeting with them and stuff. And it is a little challenging. I think another thing, it's different methods of communication. I know at Bloomberg, we foster a very like collaborative environment where we all like sit on an open floor plan. It's so easy to just like tap a coworker in the shoulder and be like, hey, I need help with this, or like, what's going on with this? And I feel like we used to always joke around of like, oh, this meeting could have been an email. And then like now that everything's virtual, we're like, wow, everything could have been an email. But now that we've been in this virtual environment kind of for a couple of months, I realized like, no, there are some times where like meetings are needed, like personal interaction sometimes is needed. But I think communication is like a big thing tool, like kind of like what Javier mentioned earlier, like you need to find ways where you can use different tools to make sure you are doing your job up to par, but also be able to communicate with your teammates and all of that stuff.
I think it's really good, and recently with Google, respectively. And can you all shine a light on how you managed to adapt to the new company's culture, or then following that, Laura, how you have managed to form the company culture since you've been there for a while? What are some of the pros and cons of adapting to a new company, and then what are some of the pros and cons of being part of a company for a while and then sort of trying to form that culture over time? So I guess we'll start it in the same order again. So Alex, Javier, and then Laura.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So as I mentioned, I started May 11th. So this is about 2 months into the COVID situation. And so I interviewed, onboarded, and have been working ever since that period completely in a remote situation, which is completely the opposite of what would have happened in a normal situation. At Facebook, I would have gone out to Menlo Park, met people in person as part of the interview process, and then onboarded there as well. And so, I think, for me, look, I'll reassure people that maybe are going through this or will go through this in the near future. It's hard. It's hard, and I don't want to sugarcoat it because, even for me, with all the advantages I felt I had coming into this role, having worked in the tech industry, known some people at Facebook, where I at least had a good foundation of coming into it, you do realize, as Laura kind of indicated, you do realize after a while like what you're missing. You realize, that ability to just walk over to somebody's desk or office to get an answer or ask a quick question about something. Those impromptu interactions in the hallway, in the kitchen, in the dining room, whatever. And then just those conversations that occur before meetings or right after meetings, where you really kind of move the ball forward. It's a challenge to move to a situation that's really just more, it has to be more deliberate, right? It has to be, the team meetings that are scheduled that you engage on, the one-on-one meetings that you go out and schedule. So I think all of that, the kind of the best advice that I've kind of picked up along the way and try to take is, you start wherever you start, keep trying to build on that. Keep trying to come back to the one-on-one relationships that you've cultivated. If you're sitting in a team meeting where maybe somebody speaks up that you haven't met yet, take that opportunity to reach out and introduce yourself and really just try to build those connections little by little so that A, your network grows, but B, should the time ever come where you find yourself working with that person, you've got that relationship. The other thing is, and this I think holds true whether you're a student, interning, or working at a job like this, is the importance of finding a routine and finding a routine that where all your needs and all your responsibilities are met. And obviously that work is top of mind. But if you're a parent like me, making sure the balance that you need is there to do the distance learning, and that's something my wife and I went through, is a key part of it. The other thing I'll just tell you that's for me been reassuring since I joined Facebook is just how much they impress upon you to consider your mental health, consider your sanity, and making sure that you take time each day or each week to clear your mind, exercise, do whatever you got to do, take your PTO, et cetera. And I think as just part of routines, Lauda mentioned she's been reading more, and I find myself in the same situation. I think it's a product of having maybe 2 extra hours that I'm not commuting each day, where I find myself just disconnecting and in a household full of women with a wife and 3 girls, I find myself getting my male bonding with reading about the founding fathers lately. So that's critically important. And then the last point I'll just make really quickly is, look, it's hard, and I never want to sugarcoat it, whether you're trying to find a job, onboarding to a new job, or adapting to an existing job. This is a tough period, but I think it's really important that anytime we find ourselves kind of lamenting this situation, I think that we just kind of stop ourselves and say, we got to find a way to overcome this. We got to find a way to be creative and just overcome this, because it's a challenge for all of us, and I think we're all in the same boat together. But and so I think just making sure that you understand you're not alone in trying to navigate this, and that ultimately the people that overcome it and find ways to overcome it will be rewarded in different ways.
Yeah, I actually wanted to echo just a couple of Alex's points as well. I started at Google. I transitioned from Facebook over to Google in the very beginning of March of this year. So I got to spend 1 week in the office with my colleagues, and then the offices were shut down, and then everything from there was work from home. So it was, I think probably the upside to that is that, and this might not be the case necessarily in tech where work environments are a little bit fluid, but I do think there is some benefit to not having a lot of time to dig into the in-person office culture and get attached to those routines before going into quarantine. Because I think, at least for me, this has kind of been how it's been since I started, and I've slowly adapted to this form of work environment and found ways to be effective. And I think all of us are going to have to go through our own process of finding out how to be effective virtually. And another point that Alex made that I definitely agree with is that there's still no substitute for building those relationships. Like in the absence of those coffee breaks, in the cafeteria or kitchen, in the absence of those kind of banter pre and post meetings, you have to find opportunities to still build relationships within your organization or externally with stakeholders that you work with or folks who you're interested in pursuing for mentorship and all that. You still have to, you may even have to put a little bit more extra effort in order to develop those relationships, but it's absolutely critical. I think in DC, everyone's aware that relationships are currency, and you really have to put in that time, make that effort to just check in with folks regularly. I think that's going to go a long way for you. and to Alex's last point as well, one of the things that I always tell people, and this is, on campaigns, you call it being scrappy, right? In the corporate world or government world, you may call it being adaptive. But I think at the end of the day, one of the things that employers are always going to find most valuable, and something that you should instill in your work ethic and your work style, is just being able to go into a situation, evaluate the circumstances and adapt to those circumstances. If you were used to taking meetings and meeting people through networking events, developing those relationships that way, you now faced with these circumstances, you have to look for ways to quickly adapt and substitute those strategies for new strategies in these current circumstances. So, and I don't think there's been a single campaign that I haven't worked on, or like some office that I've worked at, where someone isn't being complimented for like their scrappiness, just their ability to really go into any situation, regardless of the stakes involved, the knowledge gaps that might exist going into those particular circumstances, and being able to just really like dig in, figure it out, work with others to find solutions. Like that's really going to be something that's going to carry you through your careers.
And I'd like to start off highlighting two things that I think Alex mentioned that are super important. I think right now we need to very much so focus on being patient with others, and also be kinder to ourselves. I think we oftentimes, I know one thing I've struggled with right now is I'm so used to being so productive, and then with everything going around me, sometimes like my mental health is just like, and I need to like pause, take a break. And I think right now we need to learn to be kinder to ourselves as well. We need to realize like there is a pandemic going on around us. Yes, we need to like hustle and keep working hard. But if you do need to take a break, if you need a mental health day, like it should not be like, you should not think twice about it. I think that's one thing I'm very appreciative of where I work is like my manager, if I, in my one-on-one check-ins, when I tell her, I'm a little overwhelmed with stuff, she'll be like, what can I take off your plate? Why don't you take a mental health day? And I think that's so important, companies that do foster those types of things. And I think we need to be patient with each other, recognizing that we are all trying to adapt to a new type of environment. And I know in my workplace as well, like they've tried to do small ways to kind of make sure we are still in that collaborative environment. Like we have every Friday, like a newsletter type of thing that goes out. We have like step challenges. And at Bloomberg Industry Group, I am the chair for an employee resource group for Hispanic and Latinos. And one of the things we're trying to do is like, all right, how can we still be supportive of all of our employees and still do fun things? So like we're still finding ways of like, maybe we can do an online cooking class, or maybe we can find ways to do like a game night. So there's different ways to like make sure you still are fostering relationships which are super important wherever you go, whether it's just your job that you're at or your internship or anywhere. But relationships are important, and there's different ways to continue fostering them in this new virtual environment.
Yeah, and Laura, thanks so much. I think that actually leads into what we're going to talk about pretty soon, which was diversity and inclusion is really an important issue that a lot of our companies and our society has been talking about for at least the last few months, if not the last few years. I know since you've been running point on diversity and inclusion in Bloomberg, what have you been doing to increase diversity within the company? I know that you're the only Latina in Bloomberg government. What is it that folks can glean from your experience? What do you hope to do? And what are really good practice points for people coming into the workforce who may not have an experience with any company or any sort of employer going, well, what am I supposed to look for? What are best practices? And when I'm looking for a job, what kind of company should I be looking for?
Thanks for that question. So when I started, I did feel like I was the only person that identified as Latina. I definitely realized there was no employee resource group for Latinos. There was one for women, there was one for Black professionals, for Asians. And so I realized, okay, like I'm here and I need to open the doors for others and find ways to support them. So one thing I did was start an employee resource group for Latinos, find ways to bring awareness of the issues in the Latino and Hispanic community to the company, find different volunteer opportunities so we can make sure like we can also contribute to our community. But I've also helped like lead initiatives with one, recruitment, and then also making sure that people understand or are aware of all the different jobs at Bloomberg Industry Group. I've taken the lead on like creating relationships with other external organizations, like association type of stuff, to make sure that they're also informing their members of open jobs. Because one of the things I have found to be the case is sometimes we are not companies sometimes don't always post the jobs on all these different platforms. It seems that like sometimes they'll just go on Indeed or sometimes on LinkedIn, but there are so many different like email chains or like different like LinkedIn groups, ways for you to just share and distribute like open vacancies. So that was one thing I wanted to do, is make sure external people were aware of all the different opportunities within the organization. And then we developed like an ambassadorship program. The idea was, how can we support our employees to also like develop their career skills, and then also like create relationships with these partnerships. So the ambassadorship program that we developed was kind of like assigning specific employees to specific membership organizations to make sure they're fostering all these relationships, and then also spreading the word and awareness on open opportunities there. So that's some of the stuff that I've been doing at Bloomberg. And I do think companies are, you know, becoming more aware of like trying to bring, you know, diverse talent into the room. But I think a lot of the conversation also needs to be on equity as well. Like, what are companies doing to make sure that, you know, their candidates and people that are already working are like also getting opportunities to grow within the company. And I think the biggest thing to always remember is, it's always good to, yes, open a door for yourself, but it's always good to try to bring someone in the room with you. And I think one of the things we always need to remember is, yes, it's great to be in the room, but you don't always want to be the lone person in the room. So you always want to find ways like, how can I help open the doors for others?
That's great advice. And so I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but I'd like to invite the audience to submit questions for our panelists too, so we can start weaving that in. I know we don't have too much time left, but Alex, I know you're a really big advocate of Hispanic networks, and that's been really helpful to you. Can you tell me, or tell the audience rather, what the importance is of the network, and actually of, in this case, being part of CHLI, what the importance of having like a Hispanic network is?
Yeah, look, I love what Laura just said a moment ago, which is about how it's not just about opening doors for yourself, but it's about opening doors for others to be in the room with you. And for me, that was, I mean, I've been blessed. And part of why I love speaking at groups like this is because before I do it, it always gives me a chance to pause and reflect and think back to all the people that have helped me along the way and opened doors for me, and you know, frankly, put pressure on me and challenge myself to make sure that I'm honoring them by continuing to open doors for other people. So, I mean, look, one of the ways I kind of think about it is, you know, in every interaction and every kind of step of the way, you want to make sure people know about you, and you want to kind of leave some crumbs behind about you and who you are, because you never know who will, you know, eat them right up. And I think it's just important. And at Facebook, this has really been something they impress upon you a lot, which is, you know, be yourself and let who you are shine through. And you know, because in part because, you know, you never know what it might lead to, what relationships it might open up, what projects or opportunities you know, it might create. And look, just today I was in some big meeting, most of the people I had never met before, and one of the things I told about myself was I have Cuban and Colombian roots, and a gal of Colombian descent spoke up right away and then added me to some workplace you know, networking group of folks of Colombian descent. And so it just kind of goes to show you again just the importance of, you know, how those connections can really lead to many more big things. I mean, everyone here on this panel, the fact that you're from Miami or a Florida Gator, I love you already, and we've never met with the exception of Keith. I love Marianne because I've met her too, and so no offense to the University of the Pacific, but you know, those kinds of connections, I lean into them, and especially in this moment where, you know, for folks that are trying to get the job or the internship or get really their first foot in the door. You might have your resume, your application sitting on a pile with 300 or 400 others. And so standing out among that group you got to tap your network, and the other part of it too is, people aren't mind readers, and so you've got to tell them what you're looking for. You've got to ask them for help, because otherwise they don't know. And that goes for me. I mean, I recognized that when I decided I wanted to make some career changes, over the last several years. The thing that everyone kept telling me was, you got to let people know. You got to let people know. Don't wait for it. You got to let people know and stay on their radar that you're in the hunt, still looking, and about the kinds of things you're looking for. The other thing about it is just don't feel like you need to have your network explode overnight. I think this really takes time to cultivate and plant seeds and nurture them. And for me, I think the fact that I was, from Miami, part of the Cuban, kind of group that moved to DC to work in politics on the Republican side, there were people that right away said, this is one of us. Let's bring him into our fold and kind of mentor him along the way. And so, but from there, you got to build it in other different ways. I mean, number one, whenever you get to that first job and every job after that, you got to do a great job. Got to do a great job so that even more doors will open up. But for me, it was really that network where it began and expanded from there. And it expanded not just in cultural, kind of roots kind of ways. It was in hearing about their experiences, because I started my job, my first real paying job in DC was working on the campaign side at the National Republican Congressional Committee. But it was through my networking and just building these relationships that I got to meet people working on presidential campaigns and other types of jobs on the Hill. And through that and reading and seeing what people turned these kind of initial steps into down the road, helped me find my way and helped me understand, like, I definitely want to do a presidential campaign. And then, from there, the road just takes all kinds of twists and turns, but it really started with a lot of those things. And so, for me, I think it all kind of culminated and came together when I worked for Senator Rubio, where all of a sudden I was working for a fellow Cuban American from Miami, Florida Gator. And I think that's just the kind of the way it works sometimes. But be easy on yourself at first. It's not going to happen overnight. Not every meeting and interaction will blow up into the next big thing. But just be patient and take chances too. I think the last point I'll make is, if we had started this year and somebody would have asked me to do a Zoom or a Zoom coffee or drinks, I would have thought, what's wrong with this person? This is weird. Now it's the norm. And so take advantage of it, seize it. That's the reality that we live in right now.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Paul McCartney, long and winding road of life, Javier, I know your path to tech was really long and winding because you didn't start out in tech like many of us. We sort of fell into it. Tell us about how you got to tech, where you started, and what inspired you to make the jump.
Yeah, and I can also piggyback off some of the stuff that Alex said to segue into that point. I'm a huge evangelist for networking. I feel like I can map out my entire career trajectory just based on a few people that I knew along the way. And I can kind of map out how I got here. But so as I mentioned, I'm a Miami native. I was born in Cuba, but grew up in Miami, went to public school, wasn't particularly a great public school, high school student, right? I really didn't have much of my stuff together while I was in high school. Ended up going to Miami-Dade College, community college down in South Florida, where I kind of got my stuff together until I transferred to FIU. And from there, really developed a passion for politics, right? Started doing internships in local municipalities in South Florida, started working with consulting firms, doing, unpaid work for them as well. And really developing those relationships. And my first taste of DC and how I ended up here was I actually, through some folks that I had interned with and had developed kind of a mentor relationship with, who also had a really great relationship with FIU's Federal Relations Director. I think we all know Carlos Becerra up here. And I actually was able to come up here and do the FIU Federal Relations internship and met someone who worked at the Miami Chamber of Commerce, who hired me to go work with them for some months after that. And it was kind of like a kind of jumping around on a checkerboard, where I would be at a job for some time, and based on some relationship that I had developed, a connection that I had fostered and cultivated, I was able to learn about new opportunities, get my foot in the door in different instances. So I did that with in the campaign world, where I kind of campaign opportunities were presented based on the relationship that I had and the work product that I had delivered. And so I did that through the campaign world. Through kind of relationships that I had in that world, I was able to get my foot in the door for some interviews on the Hill, where I was able to work as a communications director for a full congressional term. And then, my background is not really focused in one particular area. I think comms and digital is like the area where I focused on the most. But I've worked in policy at the county level. I've knocked doors for commission county commission races. I've done tracking work. I've done press work, digital work. Right, like it's kind of been all over the place. And I think for a lot of people, and this is something that I've had this conversation with a lot of folks that I've tried to mentor, is a lot of times they try to have a very prescribed approach to where they want to end up, where they want to work, where they want to live. I oftentimes suggest that folks keep a little bit of an open mind, because throughout the course of all the work that I have done, I never imagined it would result in a job in tech. But I remember as I was working one of my final campaigns in the very end of 2018, a recruiter from Facebook reached out to me because my kind of hodgepodge of experience from all these different areas and at different levels of government had fit right into a role that they had available on their state and local outreach team, right? So opportunities that I didn't even know were possible, right, just kind of presented themselves because of the fact that I was really open to new possibilities. I was open to learning new skills along the way, to exploring like where my career could potentially end up. I remember when I was in college, I had this idea, like any good Cuban son, that I was going to graduate from FIU, go to law school, become a lawyer, and that was the trajectory that all of us are going to have. And I kind of took a deviation from that, and I think the results, I'm very satisfied with the results, but that wouldn't have been possible if I wasn't really open to possibilities and open to opportunities. But one of the things that I kept constant throughout the entire time, and I think folks that are working at these major tech companies will tell you, it's like you really have to be mindful about the skills that you're developing, right? I knew that maybe not in tech, but I knew that I was very interested in digital work. And through my time as a communications director on the Hill, I presented a marketing strategy and a digital strategy for our chief, and asked for some pilot money so we can try running some campaigns and see how effective they could be. As a result of that, I got more money to do more creative things. I knew that I wanted to develop my video editing skills, so I pitched new video content that we could develop and practice along those lines. And I was able to spend more of my time in the office working on those things. So I think you really, while maybe the destination might not be clear, I think you need to have a clear image of like what kind of work you think you might want to be doing, or where you see yourself in 5 years. And don't be so prescriptive about the specific path, but just make sure that every step along the way, you're doing as much as you can to develop the skills that are going to be necessary for you to land those jobs and make that transition.
That's really good advice, and for many of us with different groups, that's sort of been kind of like, oh, we got from A to B to C, and we didn't know how we got it. And so we've only got a couple minutes left. So actually starting with you, Javier, in about 5 or 7 words, I know it's really short for a lot of us who are verbose by nature, but what advice would you give to students who are about to enter the job market and are like, all right, I have no idea what to do, COVID's happening, first job, first everything. What's the, like, this is what you need to do, or at least this is a good idea?
Just reach out to as many people as possible. Network. You never know what opportunities are out there until you start talking to folks. And just, I know many instances where I've reached out to someone just to let them know that I'm looking for work or interested in working in a particular area, and it may not be immediate, but maybe, a couple weeks later, a couple months later, they'll remember me and come back and say, hey, I think this may be a great opportunity for you. I'll put in a word if necessary. But that's not possible unless, as Alex mentioned, you're not afraid to reach out to these folks and just like have those conversations. You have to ask. There are people in organizations all across the country. I know this was the case when I was at Facebook, and it's the case now at Google. There are people in these companies who are searching for other Latinos that are qualified and can come work in these companies, because representation is very needed. And they're looking to develop talent. They're looking to mentor, but you have to ask.
Laura, what are your tips and advice?
Networking is huge as well, and I think the biggest thing is to not be scared to apply. I think oftentimes people will read sometimes a job description, will sometimes read things, but if you actually what I've heard from a lot of recruiters, and I think Daniel previously mentioned this in his presentation, is a lot of times, sometimes the qualifications are a wish list. So I think that should never deter you from still applying. I think you should still find ways to customize your resume, customize your application, just to make sure you hit some of those qualifications. But the biggest thing is, if you know someone at that place, or you know someone that might be able to put in a word for you, do not be scared to reach out and see if you can leverage that relationship.
And Alex, I know you touched on this a lot, but what are your tips for success?
Yeah, be patient, tap your network, use the resources that are available to you, just like CHLI, your college, etc. I think those are invaluable, especially during this period. Once you get there, do a great job, and that will unlock all the other doors. And keep learning every single day. I'm 40 years old. I've been working since 17, 18 years, and I still have to do that every single day and get better every single day. And so those are probably the high level tips to offer.
These are all great. Even I'm writing them down, because you never know. Maybe a job will open up with the Nats pretty soon. So, but I'm really happy that everyone got to sit down and have this conversation. Thank you to CHLI. Thank you to everyone for tuning in and learning about tech. It's been a great conversation. I know we're right up against time, so I'm going to throw it back to Marianne Gomez-Orta, President and CEO of CHLI.
All right. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Keith. And Alex, Javier, and Laura. I also jotted down the notes too, and so just kind of wanted it before I open it up to the networking. And if you're still on with us and you're interested in joining us for the networking, please stay. It's an opportunity what we're going to do is we're going to open it up for all the participants to join us right after our next presenter, who has some really cool information about a budget planning app. But I jotted down, some of the things that you mentioned, making sure you connect with your alumni network. Even if whether you were at a high school, community college, university, graduate level, those are great alumni. Those networks are just phenomenal. Think about some of the professors that you recently had, or some of your classmates. Some people in the past have said, oh, Marianne, you don't want to talk to classmates because, that's your competition. They may not all be actually your competition. They may be looking for something in a different area, and you may actually cross paths. And sometimes, I think Congressman Bill Flores mentioned this earlier too, it's also to give, not always be looking to get, right? And so if you're able to give somebody, a classmate, a former classmate, a colleague, some information, they might be able to help you out with something else. Join LinkedIn networks and groups, update your LinkedIn profile. I also mentioned, a lot of people, especially recent college graduates, aren't really familiar with LinkedIn. So just think of it as Facebook, but, more of a business setting. And then make sure that things line up, that you don't have some crazy things on Facebook that, a potential employer is going to say, okay, I'm not really sure about, about what's going on here, because now that we're checking everybody out from a social media standpoint, there has to be some consistency to your brand across all of the platforms. So be, thoughtful about that. I love how you all mentioned, sharpening your skills and asking friends. I know I've talked to other people in the past too, where they'll say, oh, I'm looking for a job. I'm like, okay, cool. What are you looking for? What company do you want to work for? And they're like, I just want a job. I'm like, okay. And then I don't know if I can help you. You know, I mean, like, help me, help you, right? So to kind of narrow that down. So thanks again for all of the good advice. I'm now going to introduce our next speaker. We've got Jared, who's going to be joining us here. I just mentioned a little bit and teased it up a little bit. Jared, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, especially because I don't want to pronounce your last name incorrectly, dear. I always try to be very respectful of pronouncing people's names correctly. But why don't you go ahead and jump in and share with us what I consider is a really cool app called Mint by Intuit, and to help us learn a little bit more about that. And then right after Jared's presentation, we'll open it up to some networking, and I'll introduce some of the friends that have joined us for that networking, and maybe potentially some connections for some mentorship as well. So Jared, are you on there, dear? I am.
I'm here. Can you hear me, Marianne?
I can see you.
You can't see me.
No,
okay.
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Of course that's happening. You can't trust technology in the day and age when we are.
I could see you earlier.
All right, give me 1 second. Let me figure out how to change this camera here. Because for some reason it's being a pain in the butt. Okay. This should do it. Let me know.
All right, there you are.
Can you see me?
Right there. Yeah, I can see you now. So I'm going to make an assumption that everybody else can also see you. So
okay, perfect.
Do the formal intro and give us a little summary of what the Mint app is. And while you're doing that, I know we'll start lining up the folks for the networking and then set that up. So go ahead, Joe. The floor is yours.
Awesome. I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Marianne, and thank you, CHLI, for having me on today. I'm going to actually go ahead and let me share my screen with you guys. I'm going to pull up just a quick presentation for you for us to be able to walk through this. And so I think and Marianne, can you see this okay? I just want to make sure.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, awesome. So I think the last panelist, kind of, some of the questions kind of really raise a lot of questions for kind of, the current environment that we live in. And, you guys are thinking about getting jobs and kind of securing your financial future, and not just thinking about from jobs, but how else can you do that? And how can tech help you do that? And so more specifically, especially in times of now in a crisis, and my name is Jared Davidov. I lead financial readiness programs for Intuit Education at Intuit. And really what does that mean is it's helping empower students, whether it's high school, community college, university, own their financial futures and feel confident that they can set themselves up for future success. And so whether that's through personal finance, we'll go through Mint in a little bit, but maybe it's through taxes or other various initiatives. Really quickly, who is Intuit? You may or may not recognize the name, but as soon as I say TurboTax, you are probably a little bit more familiar, because the two things in life you can't avoid, right, are death and taxes. We also happen to have QuickBooks, which is a platform and accounting software for small businesses to help them run their business. And then last but not least, also Mint, which is what we're going to go through today, which is a personal finance app that kind of helps you build budgets and so on and so forth. And one thing I do want to mention, just similar like you guys and everybody else, is that COVID has had a major impact on us and as well as our customers. And one thing, and I'm showing statistics here that you'll kind of see, these are ones that you've probably seen in the news all the time, and ones that I just want to bring up because this does relate to the mental health that Laura was talking about from the last panel and why personal finance is so important. As of today, the U.S. jobless claims is up to about 52 million individuals. 88% of adults are stressed out about personal finance, and that might be paying a mortgage, paying your rent, it might be paying for bills. There is a disproportionate effect on lower income adults, and approximately 52% have experienced any form of job upheaval. And then I think last but not least, this doesn't necessarily tie 100% to personal finance. It does from an employment standpoint, but small businesses have 2 weeks or less of cash liquidity. And then I'll talk a little bit about why that's important and how Mint kind of helps you do that. So what is Mint? Mint is your financial life in one place. And as you guys are starting to think about getting jobs or getting jobs, but then also having side hustles, whether it's dog watching, Uber Eats, any sort of those things, being in control of your personal finances is extremely important because, as Laura mentioned, is that mental health. So getting a job is one thing, but then having stress about money is a whole other thing. And so Intuit and what we've decided, one of our products is Mint, and it's personal finance app. So it's your financial life in one place that's easy to understand. And why that's important and what makes Mint different from other tools, and you guys might be familiar with if you're with Chase or Bank of America or any of those larger institutions and you have the app on your phone, you might see, oh, my bank has a personal finance app, or they show me where I spend money or how much money I have left in my bank account. The biggest difference between what Mint does and what some of those banks do is Mint pulls in your full financial life. So let's just say you have a credit card with your local credit union. Let's say you maybe have a checking account with a major bank. Maybe you have a mortgage with somebody else. And maybe you have your bills and utilities through whether AT&T or whoever your local provider is. What Mint does is it takes all of that and puts it into one place for you. So it helps and guides you create budgets for yourself. It helps you set short and long-term goals. You have the ability to track your monthly bills as well, which is pretty important to make sure that you don't miss any payments, which in fact can make an impact on your credit score. It helps you analyze and develop spending behaviors, which this is probably one of the most important things. And this is an analogy that I use pretty often with students in the class. It's a little far-fetched, so stick here with me for a second. But odds are when you guys, you wake up in the morning, you probably pick up your phones, and you start scrolling through some form of social media, whether it's Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. One thing that we're trying to do with Intuit Education and our team and our programs is we want that initial reaction of waking up and checking your social media. How do we make social media become, maybe it's your budget, right? So assuming that you'll wake up and check your budget right away is a little far-fetched. But how do we create those spending habits and those smart money decisions so that you're not just spending all of your money on going out to eat or at coffee shops or subscriptions, for example? Mint just pulled a large data set and found that the average individual spends roughly about $600 per year on subscriptions. So Netflix, Hulu, any sort of those subscription services. Another really important one, since you guys are just kind of starting out, is credit scores. Credit score, you can, if you're not familiar or you're not sure of what it is, it's kind of like your adult GPA, and it impacts you for the rest of your life. It will follow you for the rest of your life. So whenever you are trying to, if you want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, or you want to get a credit card, your credit score has an impact on that, because what your credit score does is it tells financial institutions your level of risk. And the lower the credit score, the worse benefits you will get. The higher the credit score, then the less interest you might see on whether it's your credit card. And then what Mint does is it gives you an up-to-date kind of credit score for you. It updates weekly. Your credit score doesn't really make an impact weekly, just unless you decide to get a car or get a new credit card. But usually it takes a little bit longer to have a difference. And then it also gives you ways to help improve what your credit score is. And so there's 6 different categories that make up your credit score, whether it's average age of credit, the types of credit, your debt to income ratio. Mint will help you go through that. And then last but not least, what Mint does is it helps you compare different types of credit cards and savings accounts. For those of you that don't have credit cards or you're looking to get credit cards, I know myself, before I was 18, I was trying to figure out why my parents got so much mail all the time, and I very quickly learned it was because they were credit card offers. And as soon as I turned 18, the same mail came to me. And not really having the experience and understanding, the first thing that I did, I opened up a credit card offer, applied for it, and that's still a credit card that I had today. And it's probably one of the worst credit cards I have, is that I don't get any benefits from it. It's a very high interest rate. And it's just because I simply didn't do my due diligence when I was ready. And then last but not least, there's obviously a ton of different apps out there, but Business Insiders calls Mint, it's been the #1 budgeting app for the last 3 years. So that's pretty cool to see. So that's a little bit about Mint. I've only got a couple more minutes, and then I will open it up to questions, but I just wanted to give you guys 10 suggestions to managing money during a crisis while you are just kind of starting out your careers and thinking about where you want to go. This is not an extensive list. It is not the only list. One thing, and I'm willing and happy to share this with Mary Ann, if you guys want to send this out, there are a couple things that I really want to point out. Number 3 is revisiting your monthly budget. If there's areas that you know that you can pull back, that is probably one of the first things that you can do to make an impact in the environment that we live in today. Next would be protecting your credit score. Unfortunately, this happens a lot during times of crisis. There's a lot of scams out there. I'm sure one that you're very familiar with during tax time is you'll get a call from the IRS saying that you owe money, and if you pay now, then you don't have to pay the larger amount of money that the IRS is asking for. There are tons of frauds out there that happen during times of crisis because people understand that I need help and what are the ways to do it, and people try to take advantage. So those would be 2 quick things that I would really want to call out. And again, there's a ton of other different things that you can do. Use free resources. You don't need to pay for personal finance advice. Mint is free. You can find, whether it's from Mint, from Credit Karma, NerdWallet, there's a ton of different free resources out there that you shouldn't have to pay to help you with your financial futures. So with that, I will go ahead and open it up to Q&A for the last couple of minutes.
All right, I think they're going to be questions in the Q&A section. And I think that, let's see here, I know I had a couple of questions in the, let's see here, I got a message saying that the system is not coming up here, but I got one of the questions. Let's see, are you able to see one of the questions, Jared?
I'm looking at the chat, but I don't see, I might be looking at the wrong chat, but I don't see any questions.
Okay, so I don't see that on there either. So I got a text message here. So one of the things that comes up too is I'll ask you for some of the students and ask me questions before. So there's always this thinking that with some college students, current or they just graduated, and like, look, I'm barely making it. Like, why do I need this app? What do I need to really track? And you know, would there even be a credit score for, like, if, you know, do you have to have a credit card to actually get a credit score, or how else do you get a credit score? So it's kind of a combination question. So, like, if I don't really have a whole lot of money and I'm just a student, like, do I really need this, right? And then the other is, like, if I don't really have a credit card, should I get one? Do I need that for, like, a job? I kind of have my own personal answer to that, Jared, but what's yours, dear?
Yeah, of course. So it's never too early to create a budget for yourself. Even if you don't have a job, but if you're, you know, you guys are just kind of wrapping up and you have student loans, or you're going to be coming into a job, having a budget in itself is important, because what it really does is it gives you awareness. It gives you awareness of your income that you are making and then the amount of money that you're spending. So it doesn't need to be something that's so extensive that ranges from like understanding like where you eat out, how many different coffee shops you go to. It really can simply be your income and your expenses. And whether you do this through an app, I know a lot of people typically tend to start out, what I hear from my students that I work with is on like a napkin or pen and paper. I think that's a great way to start. But then once you really start to make money and you want to understand where your money is going and to actually understand how to safely, whether it's spend it, save it, or invest it, using apps are a great way to do that. And especially, again, I just want to, call out that like use the free apps. You should not have to pay. Like for example, like Mint is free, and you know, connecting to your accounts, it's safe, and it gives you that sort of financial picture. And then to your question, Marianne, of the credit card, it can never be too early to start building your credit score. Because at some point in time, you know, if you want to go get a car, you're going to need, they're going to look for a credit score in order for you to get a loan for a car. And so and there are student credit cards out there, so you might not have a credit score, but you do have the ability to get a student credit card. And they're different in ranging that maybe they have no yearly fee, which is great to start, but then also think about ones that have some sort of student introductory rate while you're in school, or you might be able to find one through your local college.
Okay, cool. And then the other thing too is that some, depending on what some jobs are, they'll check your credit score, right? And so they're gonna want to look up. You know, some people have to go through a background check and a credit check or whatever, and that's usually what they'll do nowadays. Of course, they're also doing like online social media checks and everything else. So I just wanted to double check. So Mint is free, correct?
Yes, correct. Mint is free.
Okay. And so you just have to go wherever you get your apps and download it. And does it sync to your bank, or can you also manually enter information?
So how it works, so you can either go to mint.com is one way to do it, or you can download it on your phone or your iPod or iPad, whatever, any device that you have, tablet. And what you do when you download the tool is you'll actually sign into your bank account, similar to like what you do when you're checking your statements. And then you can do this for multiple, so you can see your entire financial picture in one place. And so you can, again, as I mentioned, you can have whether it's your major credit or your major bank, as well as your local credit union in one place.
Okay. And does it help you, can you also like track like your student loan?
You can, yeah. So you can, you can definitely add your student loan into your budget. The one also great thing you can do is add goals. So let's say you want to pay off your student loan in X amount of time. By doing that, what Mint will do is it'll tell you how much to put away per month in paying it, but then also will say how much you're saving in interest. So it'll allow you to see the difference between whether you pay it off in 20 years or 10 years.
I could have used Mint many, many moons ago. So, Jared, if you can join us here, we're going to start, opening it up a little bit for a networking, just in case, and then if there might be some other questions or some chat. So I want to go ahead and just thank again, Jared. Thank you very much for the information. Don't go away. Stay with us. We're also being joined by some other folks. We want to open it up to a networking opportunity for everyone to really get to meet some folks. And so before I open that, a couple of little housekeeping things here is we're going to, as soon as I kind of give that key word here, we're going to stop recording so that we can have a more open conversation. But let me first do a little bit of teeing up here of what we're going to be doing. So we're going to do a little networking with some